Hey everyone, we've updated our channel name from Chinese Novel Audio Wave to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Nothing else will be changing. We're still uploading a new video every day, bringing you the best Chinese novel audiobooks. Let's dive into today's story. 1226 Kill the Devil with One Sword. When everyone was surprised that Lu Chen appeared outside the Great Xia Dynasty barrier, suddenly a great emperor whispered, "Hey, do you think this Lu Chen looks very similar to Chen Lu?" Although the emperor's voice was small, it was still heard by Emperor Taikong. Emperor Taikong suddenly looked at Lu Chen, who was still in the same place and had not escaped. He found that Lu Chen's appearance was indeed very similar to the Lu Chen outside the Great Xia Dynasty's barrier. It's just that because of the difference in realm, the aura and pressure they exude are different, so their temperaments seem to be somewhat different. Lu Chen in the distance exuded a blood-red murderous power, and he looked like a god of death, while Chen Lu looked more like a modest gentleman. Although the souls of both of them seem to be complete, they are too similar. Moreover, Chen Lu is already a saint at such a young age, which is unique in the universe. Emperor Taikong frowned and asked directly, "Chen Lu, are you hiding something from me?" Lu Chen smiled faintly, and the next moment his body fell apart, turning into points of light and dissipating into the void. Seeing this scene, how could Emperor Taikong not understand what was going on? This so-called Chen Lu was Lu Chen. Chen Lu, on the other hand, is Lu Chen. Unexpectedly, Lu Chen actually used his clone to follow them all the way. After finding out Chen Lu's identity, everyone's eyes fell on Lu Chen outside the Great Xia Dynasty's barrier. They wanted to see how Lu Chen, a 5th-level emperor, could defeat a 9th-level demon. Facing the 9th-level demon, Lu Chen not only did not hide in the Great Xia Dynasty's barrier, but chose to come out instead. He must have the confidence to deal with this 9th-level demon. Lu Chen glanced at the demon transformed by Emperor Guang's not far away, and then a silver-white sword appeared out of thin air in his hand. The moment the sword fell into Lu Chen's hands, the sword body instantly turned blood-red and released a terrifying pressure. This pressure made all the emperors in the distant Qingyu Holy Land unable to stand up. Even Emperor Taikong, an emperor of the 9th level, could not withstand this pressure. Emperor Taikong's face changed drastically. What level of weapon was this? How could it have such a terrifying pressure? Emperor Taikong raised his head and looked at Lu Chen in the distance. At this moment, he discovered that the 9th-level demon was so frightened that he retreated again and again. That was the 9th-level demon. Lu Chen just took out a spiritual weapon and scared the 9th-level demon. This was the first time that Emperor Taikong was afraid of the devil. Seeing that Emperor Guang seemed to have the idea of escaping, Lu Chen smiled and said, "Don't think about escaping. Let me help you get rid of it." As he spoke, Lu Chen gathered all the murderous power in his body. The next moment, Lu Chen's body turned into a ray of bloodlight and instantly appeared in front of Emperor Guang's. Then he swung the sword, and countless bloodlights shot out from the god-breaking sword. Blood soul slash. The next moment, Emperor Guangxi's body was torn into pieces, and bright red bloodlight emanated from the cracks, becoming brighter and brighter. Before Emperor Guangxi could react, his body suddenly exploded. This was the first time that Lu Chen used the saint-level sword technique, and he did not expect it to be so powerful. He knew that he could deal with the 9th-level demon, but he did not expect it to be so easy. What he didn't expect was that all these people in front of him were the people on the other side of the abyss of the universe. Seeing that the 9th-level demon transformed by Emperor Guangxi was killed by Lu Chen with a single sword, everyone in Qingyu Holy Land widened their eyes and stared at Lu Chen with an expression of disbelief. That was a 9th-level demon, and he was killed with just one sword. Even if they sent out a great emperor of the 9th level, they would not be able to deal with a demon of the 9th level. Lu Chen was only at the 5th level. A great emperor of the 5th level easily killed a demon of the 9th level. How terrifying must his strength be? If he could kill a 9th-level demon with one sword, could he also easily kill a 9th-level emperor? Thinking of this possibility, the emperors present at the Qingyu Holy Land were sweating profusely, including Emperor Taikong, who already felt that his life was coming to an end. The Emperor of Killing loves killing the most, and Lu Chen is probably already targeting them now. When Emperor Taikong came to his senses, he immediately said, "Run." As soon as he finished speaking, the emperors of Qingyu Holy Land woke up as if from a dream. They quickly turned around and fled into the distance. They had no intention of fighting with Lu Chen at all. Others can kill a 9th-level demon with just one sword, but fighting with Lu Chen is like an old man hanging himself because he thinks his life is too long. Their only way to survive now is to use the cosmic abyss to delay Lu Chen so that Lu Chen cannot come over, thus giving them a chance to escape. Seeing Emperor Taikong and his men fleeing in fear, Lu Chen just laughed and did not chase them. With this cosmic abyss, he really cannot chase after them directly at the moment, but he has a holy level teleportation array in the central star field. If he wants to block these people's way, there is no need to chase after them directly. After Emperor Taikong and his companions had fled for a day and a night, they suddenly realized that no one seemed to be chasing them. At this time, a great emperor said, "Son, with that cosmic abyss, even if Lu Chen is strong, he should not dare to catch up. That is a place where even the emperor of the 9th realm cannot escape. The most important thing is that the abyss is too weird and can actually turn people into demons." They believed that Lu Chen would not take such a big risk to kill them. Emperor Taikong stopped, looked back in the direction of the Great Xia Dynasty, and released his spiritual sense to sense, but indeed he did not sense any trace of Lu Chen. Emperor Taikong breathed a sigh of relief. If it weren't for the cosmic abyss, they would probably have all perished here. After Emperor Taikong relaxed, he sighed deeply. "I never thought Lu Chen could be so patient. It stands to reason that a strong man like Lu Chen should have the dignity of a strong man, but he created a clone to follow the ferry boat of Qingyu Holy Land and even worshipped him as a master. It seems that he does not have the airs of a strong man at all." An emperor next to Emperor Taikong said, "I really don't understand why Lu Chen wanted to create an avatar to follow us." Emperor Taikong said, "This is because I am eager to recruit a disciple. If I hadn't seen that he was so talented and wanted to train an excellent disciple, I wouldn't have been fooled. He was just playing along. Whatever. It didn't cause any damage anyway." Another emperor said, "Son, we have not conquered the Great Xia Dynasty yet, and we are going back so soon. I am afraid that this will cause dissatisfaction from the ancestors. And I'm afraid it's hard for us to explain Emperor Guangxi's matter." Emperor Guangxi came here to be a supervisor, but none of them were fine, and Emperor Guangxi, the 9th-level supervisor, died. When they go back, the suspicious Lord Qingyu will definitely think that they murdered Emperor Guangxi. End of this chapter. 1227 Fighting against the four major forces. After hearing what the emperor next to him said, Emperor Taikong fell into deep thought. Indeed, if they go back now, the Lord of Qingyu will most likely think that they are planning a rebellion. Although the death of Emperor Guangxi has been recorded on the projection stone, the image on the projection stone can be tampered with, and Lord Qingyu may not believe the image on the projection stone. Even if Lord Qingyu believed the image on the projection stone, they were the ones who first induced Emperor Guangxi to explore the way. Based on this point alone, Lord Qingyu would most likely suspect whether they had already known about the danger of the cosmic abyss and deliberately did not tell Emperor Guangxi, resulting in Emperor Guangxi being turned into a demon by the abyss. Emperor Taikong thought for a while, and finally said, "Now that Lu Chen has grown up, we can't be his opponent at all. There is no way to stay here. I will tell the old ancestor directly. If the old ancestor insists on attacking the Great Xia Dynasty, let him go to the battle personally. Lu Chen could even kill a 9th-level demon with one sword, and if they still try to get closer, they would be courting death. If the Lord of Qingyu insists on seeking death, Emperor Taikong will not continue to serve him. Anyway, this time when he returns, he will have to plan how to deal with the Lord of Qingyu. The Qingyu Holy Land can no longer allow the Lord of Qingyu to continue to struggle like this. They must retain their strength and wait for the day when the great catastrophe of the era comes." Thinking of this, Emperor Taikong once again ordered the ferry boat of Qingyu Holy Land to speed up its return to Qingyu Holy Land. Outland. At this time, Lu Chen didn't know that the major forces such as the Xia Dynasty and the Tianji Tower were already heading towards them. These days, Empress Tianong has led the Great Xia Dynasty's foreign exploration fleet to many places, but every place is the same. There are no living creatures, let alone people from other worlds. Lu Chen even suspected that those people from other worlds had all died. After all, Empress Tianong had been to the outside world before her reincarnation, and it was unknown how many billions of years had passed since then. It was possible that those people from other worlds had left the outside world or died. Lu Chen stood on the roof of the Feihong Immortal Boat's palace, looking at the endless wasteland in the distance. At this time, Empress Tianong was also standing beside him. Lu Chen said, "There really is no one here. I didn't expect the outer realm to be so desolate. I don't know what happened in the outer realm after you left. Why did all the people from the other realm disappear?" Empress Tianong said, "You can ask those emperors who have been to the outer realms." After all, she had been reincarnated, and no one knew how many years had passed during this reincarnation. However, there were some emperors in Lu Chen's fleet who had been to the outside world in the past 10,000 years, and they knew more about the outside world. Lu Chen said, "I asked them a long time ago, and they didn't know why the outer realm had become so desolate." When Lu Chen's clone was exploring the outside world, he didn't meet anyone, so he immediately summoned the emperors who had been to the outside world and asked them about the outside world. It turned out that the current outside world was completely different from what they knew. At that time, when they came to the outside world, they had to be on guard against people from other worlds at all times, for fear of losing their lives if they met people from other worlds. But now they have been in the outside world for so long, let alone people from other worlds, they have not even seen an emperor of their own universe. This outside world is no longer the outside world they remember. It is obvious that something must have happened in the outer land, which is why it has become so desolate today. Lu Chen was speechless. If he couldn't find people from other worlds, he would have no way of understanding what the world those people from other worlds were like through them. Wouldn't this trip be in vain? Just when Lu Chen was considering whether to go back, suddenly, his spiritual sense sensed the auras of countless emperors rapidly approaching their direction. Lu Chen frowned, and Empress Tianong also noticed it at this moment. She said coldly, "Just now you complained that you couldn't meet anyone, so now someone will come." Lu Chen smiled and said, "It's just that there are a lot of people coming." The auras of those great emperors were very close to theirs, and it was obvious that they were from the same universe as them. The appearance of so many great emperors at the same time, and approaching them so quickly, might very well be their ill intentions. Lu Chen did not hesitate at all and directly sent a message to the emperors of the fleet, "The enemy is approaching, prepare for battle." As soon as Lu Chen finished speaking, the Saint-level Star Destroyers activated their formations and entered attack mode. At the same time, the four major forces in the distance also realized that the fleet of the Great Xia Dynasty was ready to attack. The immortal boats of the four major forces were lined up in a row, and all the attack formations were opened. However, in places like the outer realm, most of the time the outcome is not determined by which side's immortal boat is more powerful, but by the personal strength of the emperor. The offensive formations on the immortal boats are only used for consumption. Although the attack array of the immortal boat played a decisive role in victory, it was particularly important in depleting the strength of the emperor. The spiritual energy in the outer realm is very thin, and it is very difficult to restore strength. If too much spiritual energy is consumed, once you are besieged by multiple emperors, even an emperor of the 9th level will be at risk of falling. At this time, the immortal boats of the four major forces all stopped. Xuantian stood on the roof of the Tianji Palace, looking straight at Lu Chen who was a light year away. This was the first time Lu Chen saw Xuantian. When he first saw Xuantian, he felt a strong sense of crisis in his heart, and he was very keenly aware of the original power in Xuantian. The aura of the original power on Xuantian's body is exactly the same as the original power condensed into a giant palm above the Great Xia Dynasty. In other words, the one who attacked the Great Xia Dynasty was most likely Xuantian. Thinking of this possibility, Lu Chen's face instantly turned gloomy. If it was really this Xuantian, then Xuantian's strength was definitely above his. He didn't know if he would be Xuantian's opponent using the spirit gathering array. It looks like there will be some trouble next. Xuantian looked at Lu Chen and said to the three people beside him, just take action. As long as Lu Chen dies, I will be able to separate the Great Xia Dynasty from this universe. At that time, the threat of the Great Xia Dynasty will no longer exist. As soon as Xuantian finished speaking, Empress Dusheng gave an order to Yunhua Palace. At that moment, countless beams of light shot out from the Yunhua Palace's ferry boat formation and headed straight for the Great Xia Dynasty's foreign exploration fleet. Seeing that the other side had already launched an attack, Lu Chen immediately gave the order, attack with all your strength, don't be reluctant to use the Star Destroyer. There are a lot of emperors on the opposite side, so a lot of Star Destroyers will inevitably be scrapped today. Before they are scrapped, it is best to consume more of the enemy and wait until their strength is gone before using the spirit gathering array. Facing the terrifying existence of Xuantian, Lu Chen did not dare to be arrogant at this moment. Lu Chen knew very well in his mind that the strongest enemy he had encountered since he obtained the system was the Xuantian in front of him. The moment Lu Chen gave the order, all of the Great Xia Dynasty's Holy-class Star Destroyers launched an attack, and countless black beams of light shot out from the Holy-class Star Destroyers. 1228 Everyone, it an amp, X27, s almost time to watch the show. After the magic fired by the Yunhua Palace's ferry boat collided with the black beam of light shot by the Great Xia Dynasty's Holy-class Star Destroyer, a violent explosion occurred instantly, and the continent of the outer domain was blown to pieces for a moment. However, the black beam emitted by the Holy-class Star Destroyer is obviously more powerful. The black beam carries the power of destruction. The Yunhua Palace's ferry ship is simply vulnerable in front of the Holy-class Star Destroyer. In just a moment, more than a dozen ferry ships of the Yunhua Palace were destroyed by the Star Destroyers of the Great Xia Dynasty. Some emperors tried to resist the black beams containing destructive power, but were also seriously injured. After seeing the power of the Holy-class Star Destroyer, Xuantian's face darkened. He never imagined that Lu Chen in this life could actually create such a terrifying weapon. If Lu Chen in this life is given more time to grow, who knows what kind of terrifying weapon he will be able to come up with. It is not impossible that what he creates will subvert the universe. Google search Tuacan. Seeing that the immortal boats of Yunhua Palace were being destroyed continuously, the Dusheng Empress looked at the Shenwu Emperor and the Lord of Nirvana beside her with a dark face. What are you waiting for? As soon as the Empress Dusheng finished speaking, the Lord of Nirvana immediately gave the order, ordering the immortal boats of the Nirvana Holy Land to launch an attack as well. Compared to the Yunhua Palace, the attack formations engraved on the immortal boats of the Nirvana Holy Land were much more powerful. After some of the spells hit the Star Destroyer of the Great Xia Dynasty, they directly broke through the protective formations on the surface of the Star Destroyer. After all, the Lord of Nirvana is a survivor from the last era, and the Holy Land of Nirvana still has some foundation. Seeing the powerful ferry boat of the Holy Land of Nirvana, Xuantian also frowned slightly. I didn't expect that the escaped fish of the last era would be able to research such a powerful formation after surviving. It seems that this era's catastrophe must be more thorough. Those powerful holy places cannot be allowed to pass on their legacy. Otherwise, by the next era, who knows what they will come up with. At this time, the Emperor Shenwu was still observing Xuantian's reaction with the corner of his eyes. Seeing Xuantian frowning lightly, the Emperor Shenwu immediately saw part of Xuantian's thoughts. The strength of the Great Xia Dynasty was too great, which made Xuantian feel fearful. Similarly, the strength of the Nirvana Holy Land was too great, which also made Xuantian feel a little uncomfortable. In other words, as long as someone's strength reaches a certain level, Xuantian will think they are a threat. At this moment, Xuantian seemed to have noticed the gaze of Emperor Shenwu. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Emperor Shenwu. Shenwu, why don't you let the immortal boat of the Shenyu dynasty attack? Emperor Shenwu did not respond to Xuantian's question, and then he ordered the immortal boats of the Shenyu dynasty to launch an attack as well. After the immortal ships of the Shenyu dynasty joined the battlefield, the battle between the two sides became more intense. One after another, the immortal ships exploded in the outer domain, and flames shot up into the sky. The Great Xia Dynasty was also in a difficult situation. More than a dozen star destroyers were destroyed. However, Lu Chen had anticipated that there would be losses from the beginning, so this loss was still within his acceptable range. Moreover, compared with the losses of the Great Xia Dynasty, the losses of the four major forces were even more tragic. One immortal boat after another exploded. The most important point was that the emperors of the four major forces were also implicated, and many emperors were seriously injured in this first round of confrontation. They were seriously injured before the hand-to-hand combat even started. They will definitely be at a disadvantage in the close combat later. Seeing this scene, Xuantian reminded everyone, it's almost time to watch the show. If the Great Xia Dynasty's immortal boats continue to bombard us like this, I'm afraid all the emperors here will die. Xuantian's words were to remind Emperor Shenwu and others that it was the turn of the emperor of the 9th level to take the stage next. Hearing Xuantian's reminder, Empress Dusheng took the first step forward. After this step, countless vines suddenly grew on the land of the outside world. These vines instantly expanded to the bottom of the Great Xia Dynasty's Star Destroyer and wrapped up the nearby Star Destroyers. In a moment, the Star Destroyers wrapped in vines were directly crushed by the vines. After Empress Dusheng took action, Emperor Shenwu did not procrastinate like before. Although Xuantian would most likely be his enemy in the end, Lu Chen also deserved to die. He would eliminate anyone who would stop him from taking that step. Moreover, if he didn't kill Lu Chen, he might not know why Xuantian was afraid of Lu Chen. He needed to find the answer from Lu Chen so that he could deal with Xuantian. The blood of Emperor Shenwu scattered all over his body, and for a moment the entire battlefield turned blood red. The next moment, the body of Emperor Shenwu suddenly disappeared, and when he appeared again, he had arrived at the starship fleet of the Great Xia Dynasty. The Shenwu Emperor tightly grasped the holy demonic spear given to him by Xuantian and thrust it out. A spear aura containing killing power was released from the tip of the spear, and the Great Xia Dynasty and that row of star destroyers were all destroyed. Lu Chen frowned slightly. This was the strength of the 9th level killing emperor. It seemed that in order to deal with the divine martial emperor, he had to use the spirit gathering array. However, if the spirit gathering formation is used at this time, there is no guarantee that Xuantian will have other tricks up his sleeve. After all, Xuantian is the most terrifying enemy. After the Emperor Shenwu made his move, the Lord of Nirvana did not wait any longer. He took a step forward, and when he appeared again, he had arrived in front of the Feihong immortal boat. The Lord of Nirvana has a clear goal, which is to kill Lu Chen. Seeing the Lord of Nirvana heading straight for Lu Chen, Empress Tianong who was beside Lu Chen immediately rushed up and blocked the Lord of Nirvana's way. Empress Tianong has been patient for a long time, and today she can finally go all out. Feeling the murderous power emanating from Empress Tianong, Lord Nirvana just frowned slightly, but he did not back down at all. Although the Killing Emperor was difficult to deal with, the Killing Emperor in front of him was only at the 6th level. If this woman's level was the same as that of the Divine Martial Emperor, he might have been a little wary of her, but it was a pity that the difference between their levels was a full 3 levels. The Lord of Nirvana shouted, "Fire of Nirvana." As soon as the words fell, a blazing flame swept towards the Rainbow Empress like a wave. Empress Tianong did not dodge, but directly mobilized all the killing power in her body to meet the attack. When the blood-red killing power touched the Nirvana fire of the Lord of Nirvana, it exploded instantly. Both parties were forced to fly backwards by the shock wave of the explosion, but they quickly stabilized their bodies. As soon as the Lord of Nirvana steadied himself, he saw countless flying swords appearing in the sky above Empress Tianong. At this time, Empress Tianong tightly grasped the Emperor's sword in her hand and stabbed the Lord of Nirvana with one sword. The Emperor's sword, wrapped in killing power, turned into a giant dragon and rushed towards the Lord of Nirvana. After feeling the threat from the giant dragon formed by the Emperor's sword and killing power, the Lord of Nirvana did not intend to confront it head-on. He flashed his body and prepared to dodge the attack of Empress Tianong. However, what he didn't expect was that as soon as he teleported to another place, he found that the blood-red dragon was heading straight for him again, as if it had locked onto his position. End of this chapter. 1229. Why can he use the force of life? The Lord of Nirvana sneered and said, "Since you insist on seeking death, I will grant your wish." After all, he is an emperor who survived the last era. Although his killing power is indeed more difficult to deal with, he possesses the power of Nirvana, so he is not so easy to deal with either. Now that he has been locked by the killing power, he will fight it head-on. He wants to see whether the killing power is more domineering or his Nirvana power is more powerful. Then the Lord of Nirvana mobilized the power of Nirvana again. He blasted out with one palm, and a phoenix evolved from the power of Nirvana rushed straight towards the blood dragon. When the blood dragon and the phoenix collided, the two forces of the avenue exploded again, but this time neither of them was in a good condition. The Empress Tianong and the Lord of Nirvana were both blown away by the force generated by the explosion, and both were slightly injured. When Empress Tianong felt the blood overflowing from the corner of her mouth, her whole body instantly became like a wild beast that smelled blood. The next moment, the bloody murderous aura on her body became even thicker, and the murderous power became even more restless, as if she was possessed by a demon. Empress Tianong slowly raised her hand, and the Empress sword beside her kept making sword-ringing sounds. Then, countless Empress swords appeared in the sky. The greatest function of the sword of the imperial daughter is to carry the killing power of Empress Tianong. The more clones of the sword of the imperial daughter, the more fierce the next attack of Empress Tianong will be. The Lord of Nirvana also realized this. He mobilized the power of Nirvana again and prepared to fight with Empress Tianong again. However, at this moment, Empress Dusheng suddenly appeared next to the Lord of Nirvana. After seeing the Empress Dusheng coming to help him, the Lord of Nirvana smiled slightly, and then said, "Even if you are the Emperor of Killing, you can't resist the attack of two Emperors of the 9th layer." The Dusheng Empress glanced at the Tianong Empress, and then said to the Lord of Nirvana, "I didn't expect that you, an ancestor of a top-level power, would be so kind and compassionate that you can't even be ruthless to a 6th-level emperor, and you still need my help." The Lord of Nirvana chuckled, and then said, "Now is not the time to talk about this. Get rid of her quickly, otherwise Lu Chen will escape later." The Empress Dusheng did not continue teasing the Lord of Nirvana. She raised her hand and waved it. A powerful life force surged into the body of the Lord of Nirvana, and the injuries on the Lord of Nirvana were healed in a moment. Feeling that all the injuries on his body had disappeared, Lord Nirvana was slightly stunned. Only then did he realize that Empress Dusheng was walking on the path of life. Empress Dusheng is the best assistant. With Empress Dusheng around, he can completely let go of his attack and there is no need to be as conservative as before. Immediately afterwards, the Lord of Nirvana mobilized the power of Nirvana in his body, and after a moment, a huge Dharma image appeared behind him. The Lord of Nirvana continued to say to the Rainbow Queen, "Let me experience your killing power once again." The 9 heavens seal of the God of Fire. The Lord of Nirvana blasted out with his Dharma image, and a huge square seal instantly appeared in the sky. The square seal was burning with raging flames, as if it would burn everything it touched to ashes. This is the strongest move of the Lord of Nirvana. Using this move will consume a lot of his spiritual power, but in order to end the battle as soon as possible and get rid of Lu Chen who is hiding behind this woman, he can only use this move. After all, the opponent is not a simple character either. Ordinary magic is definitely useless against a 6th-level killing emperor, but he doesn't believe that Empress Tianong can withstand this move. Feeling the oppressive feeling brought by the big seal in the sky, Empress Tianong frowned slightly. It must be said that this really made her feel her life was threatened. The Emperor of the 9th level is indeed not so easy to deal with, especially the veteran Emperor of the 9th level from a top Holy Land. Just when Empress Tianong was about to mobilize her killing power and fight with all her might, she suddenly felt her body become extremely relaxed, and the injuries she had just suffered disappeared instantly. Empress Tianong immediately understood what was going on. The other side had an emperor who mastered the force of life, and they also had an emperor who mastered the force of life. Seeing that Empress Tianong had also recovered, Lord Nirvana's expression became a little more serious. "Isn't Lu Chen the Emperor of Killing? Why can he use the force of life? The Empress Du Sheng standing by also felt something strange. When Lu Chen infused the Empress Tianhong with life force just now, she also sensed that life force. She discovered that Lu Chen's life force was even more intense and vibrant than hers. It is unheard of that an emperor who proves his truth through killing can actually master such pure life force. I wonder how Lu Chen did it. After the Lord of Nirvana came to his senses, he said, "Even if you recover, what can you do? You will still be killed by me." As he spoke, the power of Nirvana on the Lord of Nirvana became more ferocious, and the speed at which the big seal in the sky fell became faster and bigger, and it also blocked the surrounding space. The Empress Tianhong had been completely locked down, and it was now impossible for her to use teleportation or space shift to hide. After Empress Tianhong gathered all the killing power in her body, she uttered a few cold words. World-destroying sword technique. The next moment, all the Emperor's swords floating in the sky turned black, and the evil spirit they emitted was no longer red, but black. Just looking at these imperial swords emitting black evil spirit from afar makes people feel creepy. These imperial swords were suspended in the sky like tombstones, as if they were going to bury all living beings. Just when the fire god's 9 heavens seal in the sky was about to touch the Rainbow Empress, all the Emperor's swords that emitted black evil spirits gathered together and turned into a huge black Emperor's sword, and stabbed at the seal in the sky. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. This sword directly pierced through the square seal in the sky. After the square seal dissipated, the huge sword of the imperial daughter still did not disappear, and went straight to the Lord of Nirvana. Seeing this scene, Lord Nirvana's face changed drastically. He obviously did not expect that Empress Tianhong could actually block his attack, and not only block it, but even counterattack. The Lord of Nirvana quickly called upon the power of Nirvana to form a shield in front of himself, but the black sword of the Emperor's daughter went straight through the shield as soon as it touched it, and the shield was subsequently shattered. The next moment, the black sword of the princess pierced through the body of the Lord of Nirvana, and the Lord of Nirvana's Dharma image also collapsed at this moment. The Empress Du Sheng standing by was filled with disbelief. The Lord of Nirvana at the 9th level was actually killed by the Empress Tianhong at the 6th level. Is the Emperor of Killing already this powerful? No, even the Lord of Nirvana is not a match for the woman opposite, so she is even less likely to be a match. This woman still has to be handed over to the Emperor Shenwu, or directly to Xuantian for handling. Just when the Lord of Nirvana turned into starlight and looked about to fall, the Lord of Nirvana laughed loudly. "I really underestimated you, but if you think you can kill me like this, then you look down on me too much." End of this chapter. 12:30. Then let me show you the real trump card of the Great Xia Dynasty. After the Lord of Nirvana's body turned into starlight, in just a blink of an eye, his body was gathered by the power of Nirvana again, and his soul was restored. Seeing this scene, Lu Chen fell into deep thought. Could it be that the power of Nirvana can make people immortal? If this is true, then this Lord of Nirvana must be extremely difficult to deal with. There shouldn't be any immortal people in this universe, so there must be some kind of limitation, right? Perhaps he only needed to kill the Lord of Nirvana a few more times to kill him completely. When Lu Chen was thinking about waiting for Empress Tianhong to continue to deal with the Lord of Nirvana, he found that Empress Tianhong spat out a mouthful of blood, and the murderous power in her body quickly returned to her body, and the whole person was shaky. Lu Chen hurriedly came behind Empress Tianhong, stabilized her body, and then used his life force to help her recover. This book was first published on the internet by. While helping Empress Tianhong recover, Lu Chen checked her body and finally understood what was going on. The world-destroying sword technique that Empress Tianhong had just used could not only hurt the enemy, but also herself. This is a sword technique that injures the enemy by 1,000 while injuring yourself by 800. Lu Chen said speechlessly, "Don't use this sword technique in the future." Although he was by Empress Tianhong's side and could help her recover quickly, if one day he was not by Empress Tianhong's side, and Empress Tianhong used this trick, wouldn't she just have to wait for death? Lu Chen felt that the Empress Tianhong in the previous life died after using this trick. Empress Tianhong did not speak. She looked coldly at the Lord of Nirvana in the distance. She had used all her strength but still failed to kill the Lord of Nirvana. She was afraid that she would not be able to deal with them next. At this time, the great Emperor Shenwu also flashed to the side of the Lord of Nirvana, and following him were the other two 9th-level emperors of the Xia Dynasty. All of a sudden, there were 5 9th-level emperors on their side. In fact, this time, there were more than 5 9th-level emperors who came to the outside world. There was also a 9th-level emperor in Yunhua Palace, and in addition to the Lord of Nirvana, the Nirvana Holy Land also sent 2 other 9th-level emperors to follow. The Lord of Nirvana took into consideration that Lu Chen was most likely the reincarnation of the Emperor of Heaven. He was afraid that Lu Chen had some special methods and would be as difficult to deal with as he was, so he deliberately brought 2 more emperors of the 9th level just in case. Lu Chen glanced at Emperor Shenwu and others in the distance. The current situation was very not optimistic for the Great Xia Dynasty. The Great Xia Dynasty does not have a single 9th level emperor, while the other side has almost more than 10 9th level emperors, and that's without counting the Tianji Tower. The most important thing is that these 9th level emperors are not the most difficult to deal with. The most difficult one is Xuantian, who has not taken any action. Emperor Shenwu looked at Lu Chen and said, "I never thought that one day you would grow to the point where I, your father, would unite the top forces in the universe to deal with you." Hearing this, Lu Chen chuckled and said, "I'm afraid you have never considered me as your offspring. In your eyes, I am just a vessel for you to take over someone else's body. Okay, let's forget about reminiscing. You can start now." Seeing Lu Chen so calm, the Shenwu Emperor and his 2 companions did not take action immediately. They always felt that something was wrong. There is not a single 9th level emperor in the Great Xia Dynasty. Logically speaking, Lu Chen should have a look of panic on his face in the current situation, but he looks as if he doesn't care. This makes people feel that Lu Chen still has some trump cards that he has not used yet. Empress Dusheng said, "If you have any trump cards, use them now. Don't blame us for not giving you a chance when you get down there." Lu Chen smiled faintly, and then said, "Well, then let me show you the real trump card of the Great Xia Dynasty." As soon as the voice fell, Lu Chen immediately sent a message to the emperors behind him and said, "Form a battle array." In a moment, all the emperors from the Great Xia Dynasty gathered together. Before Emperor Shenwu and others could understand what Lu Chen was doing, a spirit gathering formation appeared under Lu Chen's feet, and Lu Chen immediately became the center of the entire spirit gathering formation. The Shenwu Emperor and the other 2 were stunned. Spirit gathering array. The Lord of Nirvana chuckled, "It seems that you are at the end of your rope. You even use the soul gathering formation. But even if we don't take action, how long can your soul gathering formation last?" The spirit gathering formation gathered all the power of the Great Tao. With Lu Chen's body at the 5th level, it would take less than a quarter of an hour for his body to be blown up by the power of all the Great Tao. This trick could be used to scare ordinary emperors. These emperors of the 9th level have seen everything, and the spirit gathering formation is a joke in front of them. At this moment, the 3 of them were too lazy to take the initiative to attack, and they all wanted to wait for Lu Chen's body to be blown up by the various great powers. However, what they expected did not happen, and they soon discovered something was wrong. After Lu Chen became the core of the spirit gathering array, all kinds of great power gathered into Lu Chen's body, and Lu Chen's strength also increased rapidly at this moment. In a moment, Lu Chen possessed the strength of a 9th level emperor. Not only that, Lu Chen's strength was constantly improving. Soon, the pressure emanating from Lu Chen made Emperor Shenwu and other emperors of the 9th level feel very uncomfortable. The Lord of Nirvana frowned and said, "Something is wrong. How come he hasn't burst yet?" Lu Chen smiled and said, "This is a surprise I prepared for you. I hope you like it." After Lu Chen finished saying this, he took out the God-breaking sword from the system space. The moment the God-breaking sword appeared in the outer realm, a terrifying pressure from an immortal weapon descended. Xuantian's face turned pale in an instant, and the foreheads of the emperors of the 9th level, such as Emperor Shenwu, could not help but begin to sweat. What level of weapon is this? How could there be such a terrifying pressure? Just a weapon made them almost unable to move. Is this Lu Chen's real trump card? At this time, Emperor Shenwu suddenly understood why Xuantian, who was so powerful, was still afraid of Lu Chen and asked them to deal with Lu Chen. It turned out that Lu Chen had such a terrifying weapon. After the inner fear, Emperor Shenwu's mood soon changed and his eyes became greedy. If he could kill Lu Chen and obtain the weapon in Lu Chen's hand, would he be able to defeat Xuantian? Xuantian didn't dare to come out at this time, most likely because he was afraid of this weapon. Thinking of this, Emperor Shenwu took out the holy demon spear without any hesitation. Immediately afterwards, the blood power of the Emperor Shenwu exploded, and the surrounding space continued to distort. In an instant, the place where they were located turned into a sea of blood and corpses. After feeling the pressure from Lu Chen, the Emperor Shenwu knew that he had to use all his strength, so he directly released the killing field. End of this chapter. 1231. Is this something a human can do? Seeing that the divine martial emperor dared to reveal his weapon even after feeling the pressure he released, Lu Chen smiled faintly. It seemed that he was going to be a rebellious person today. The divine martial emperor was, after all, his father in this life, but it was a pity that this father never treated him like a human from the beginning. Lu Chen didn't care about these things. Since the divine martial emperor wanted to attack him, then don't blame him. Now there were no father and son here, only enemies. Lu Chen clenched the God-shattering sword in his hand, fusing all the power of the Great Tao into the God-shattering sword, and the God-shattering sword instantly emitted a colorful light. Seeing that Lu Chen had actually fused all the power of the Great Tao, the great emperors of the four major forces present were immediately stunned. The Nirvana Lord's eyes widened like bull's eyes, staring straight at the colorful power emanating from Lu Chen's body, muttering to himself, "How is this possible?" Empress Dusheng was even more shocked by the scene before her and was unable to speak. At this moment, everyone was staring straight at Lu Chen, and the divine martial emperor's expression also became extremely serious. They had never heard of anyone who could control all the power of the Great Tao and prevent them from conflicting in their bodies. Was this something a human could do? The great emperor only proves one Tao when he proves the Tao. How could he possibly master the power of other Taos? Of course, if they were survivors who survived from the last epoch, they might control one more type of great Tao power because they had already proven other Taos. But this kind of control was only very weak, and it would not be like the great Tao power of the Tao they had proven, which could be mobilized at will. However, Lu Chen not only controlled the great Tao power of one Tao, and judging from Lu Chen's casual appearance, his control over these great Tao powers had reached the level of the great emperor's control over his own Tao. It was as if Lu Chen had proven all the Taos when he proved the Tao, so he could make these great Tao powers coexist peacefully in his body without any signs of conflict. But how could anyone in this universe possibly prove all the Taos? Would the laws of the universe allow this? At this time, Zantian stared straight at Lu Chen, and the power of his origin could not help but overflow, and the surrounding space became more and more distorted. Zantian did not expect that Lu Chen would actually reach this point in this life. If he didn't get rid of him quickly, he was afraid that he would really turn the world upside down. The divine martial emperor was stunned for a moment, but quickly recovered. In this situation, even if Lu Chen was strong, he had to take action. He could feel the threat of the sword in Lu Chen's hand to him. If he didn't take action, he would be the one to die. The divine martial emperor immediately opened up all his killing domain, trying to suppress Lu Chen's strength with the killing domain, so that Lu Chen could not exert his full strength. But at this time, Lu Chen had already fused all the power of the Great Tao, which also included the power of killing, so the divine martial emperor's killing domain had no effect on Lu Chen. The divine martial emperor didn't care whether it was useful or not, and directly mobilized the killing power of his whole body. Purgatory Fire Lotus. In the next moment, countless lotus flowers burning with raging flames appeared in the killing domain. These lotus flowers exuded a strong bloody aura, and the body would be quickly corroded if it was only stained with a little. Immediately afterwards, these lotus flowers all flew towards Lu Chen. Lu Chen clenched the God-shattering sword in his hand, and slashed out with one sword. This sword did not use sword skills, there was no fancy, just pure sword energy. However, this sword energy containing the power of various great Taos instantly destroyed all the fire lotuses after touching them. Seeing that Lu Chen had easily broken his spell, the Divine Martial Emperor's face suddenly darkened. He knew that his killing domain might not be able to suppress Lu Chen's strength, but he did not expect that Lu Chen would be so powerful after using the Spirit Gathering Array. Such an ordinary sword could actually block his heavenly rank spell. The Divine Martial Emperor's hand could not help but clench the Holy Demon Spear at this moment. It seemed that he could only use that move. The Divine Martial Emperor said to Empress Dusheng and the Nirvana Lord at this time, "How long are you two planning to watch?" Hearing the Divine Martial Emperor's voice, the two of them came back to their senses. The Nirvana Lord then took action. His Dharma idol appeared behind him, and the golden Dharma idol held a huge sword in his hand. The Nirvana Lord shouted, "Fire Phoenix Nirvana Slash." Immediately afterwards, a yellow flame sword energy slashed towards Lu Chen. As the sword energy got closer and closer to Lu Chen's body, the sword energy gradually turned into a burning phoenix. Lu Chen still just gently raised the God-shattering sword and slashed out with one sword. Similarly, a sword energy containing the power of various great Taos instantly broke the Nirvana Lord's spell. Seeing this scene, Empress Dusheng was already desperate in her heart. She never expected that she would provoke such a terrifying existence. Lu Chen looked at the Divine Martial Emperor and others not far away, and said with a smile on his face, "What other means do you have? Use them all, it's time for this emperor to take action next." Hearing this, the 9 heavens great emperors of the 4 major forces also took action one after another, but the final result was the same. Lu Chen could easily block it. The Nirvana Lord suddenly thought of something, and then said loudly, "Lu Chen's strength comes from the great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty. As long as we destroy the Spirit Gathering Array, the power he has obtained will disappear instantly." Hearing what the Nirvana Lord said, everyone reacted. Yes, they didn't need to deal with the current Lu Chen at all. The current Lu Chen already had the strength close to the Heavenly Emperor, and might even be similar to the Heavenly Emperor. After realizing the thoughts of the 4 major forces, Lu Chen still had a smile on his face. He had already guessed that these people would use this method. However, the Spirit Gathering Array was not so easy to break, as long as he, as the center of the formation, released power to protect those great emperors. The people of the 4 major forces still had no way to touch the great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty. Lu Chen immediately released the power of his origin, and the black power of origin formed a huge barrier, enveloping all the great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty. Although the power of origin in his body was scarce, it was no problem to protect these great emperors for a short time. Feeling that what Lu Chen released was the power of origin, the Divine Martial Emperor could no longer stand still. Why? 1 or 2 can use the power of origin. Zantian can use the power of origin, and now even Lu Chen can call upon the power of origin. Zantian is the hidden Heavenly Emperor, so he doesn't need to be said. Lu Chen is not the Heavenly Emperor now. Where did the power of origin on his body come from? Is the way of heaven in this universe so unfair? He has been persisting on the path of killing, and he has only sensed a trace of the power of origin. Lu Chen, as his son, can directly call upon the power of origin. End of this chapter. 1232. You have grown to this point in this life. At this moment, the Divine Martial Great Emperor was extremely angry at the Heavenly Tao. If he had only discovered that Zantian was the only one who could use the power of the origin, he could barely accept it. But Lu Chen, who relied on the Spirit Gathering Array to improve his strength, could also control the power of the origin. Lu Chen wasn't the Heavenly Emperor, so why could he control the power of the origin? Did this mean that the Heavenly Tao had already defaulted to Lu Chen being the Heavenly Emperor? This book is first published on. The thought of his son taking that step before him filled the Divine Martial Great Emperor's heart with raging fire. At this moment, the blood-colored baleful aura on the Divine Martial Great Emperor gradually turned black, becoming increasingly strange, and the surrounding space became more and more distorted. Empress Dusheng noticed that something was wrong with the Divine Martial Great Emperor. She quickly poured life force into the Divine Martial Great Emperor and took out the magic treasure, the Mind Awakening Bell, in an attempt to stabilize the Divine Martial Great Emperor's mind. Divine Martial Great Emperor, wake up immediately. Empress Dusheng's voice directly reached the Divine Martial Great Emperor's brain. Hearing her voice, the Divine Martial Great Emperor's eyes suddenly regained clarity. The Divine Martial Great Emperor frowned and looked down at his body. Seeing the black baleful aura overflowing from his body, he felt very confused. What's going on? Why did he suffer a chi deviation at this time? Just now, he suddenly felt that the universe was unfair to him. Lu Chen could use the power of the origin, but he, who practiced the path of slaughter, could never take that step. Such a heavenly Tao should be destroyed. Then he gradually lost consciousness. He vaguely felt a trace of power that he had never come into contact with before. That trace of power had a great attraction to him, as if as long as he obtained that power, he could immediately become the Heavenly Emperor. After waking up, the Divine Martial Great Emperor instantly understood what was going on. Someone was bewitching him, influencing his mind. Although he did feel that the Heavenly Tao was unfair, it was not enough to make him suffer a chi deviation because of such a thing. Obviously, someone used something to amplify the negative emotions in his heart. At this time, Lu Chen did not take the initiative to attack. After seeing the black baleful aura released from the Divine Martial Great Emperor, he suddenly thought of the heavenly demon that was born in Chu Yukin's sub-universe. Moreover, he also clearly felt a trace of heavenly demon power. If it weren't for Empress Dusheng using the Mind Awakening Bell, perhaps the Divine Martial Great Emperor would have already transformed into a heavenly demon at this moment. Lu Chen was a little puzzled. Although he already knew that the heavenly demons in this world might be transformed from cultivators, under what circumstances could cultivators transform into heavenly demons? Last time, he saw the Great Emperor of the Qingyu Holy Land transform into a heavenly demon in the abyss. This time, the Divine Martial Great Emperor almost transformed into a heavenly demon without doing anything in place. What kind of mechanism exists behind the transformation of cultivators into heavenly demons? After the Divine Martial Great Emperor woke up, he clenched the Holy Demon Spear in his hand. Then, he mobilized the power of slaughter in his whole body and said to the Lord of Nirvana and Empress Dusheng and the other 9th-level Great Emperors while preparing to attack again, I will find a way to break the barrier. Once the barrier is broken, you will immediately take action. The Divine Martial Great Emperor did not believe that he had no way to deal with the power of the origin. Even if the power of the origin was the supreme power of the universe, Lu Chen was not the Heavenly Emperor after all. Even if he could control the power of the origin, it was likely not very much. Although the power is very strong, it also requires people to be able to control it. In the next moment, the Divine Martial Great Emperor's body slowly flew into the air. Then, a golden body Dharma image with a bare upper body appeared behind him. His Dharma image was very majestic, with bulging muscles all over his body, and exuded a blood-red power of slaughter, looking very fierce. The Divine Martial Great Emperor clenched the Holy Demon Spear and pointed at Lu Chen in the distance and said, "With this spear, I want to see if you can take it." In the next moment, the power of slaughter on the Divine Martial Great Emperor surged, frantically gathering towards the Holy Demon Spear. Just as the power of slaughter gathered to a certain extent, the Divine Martial Great Emperor thrust out with his spear. Blood Fiend God Slaying Spear. With this spear, a huge spear appeared in the sky and went straight for Lu Chen. Lu Chen also felt the threat brought by this technique at this moment. He raised the God-slaying sword in his hand and was about to use the blood soul slash. As a result, the spear in the sky suddenly disappeared, as if nothing had happened. Lu Chen frowned. He now possessed the strength of the Heavenly Emperor, and he could keenly detect the spatial fluctuations around him. Now they were in the Divine Martial Great Emperor's slaughter domain, and the Divine Martial Great Emperor could freely change the attack direction and attack position of the technique. In the next moment, the spear with a strong power of slaughter appeared behind Lu Chen. After detecting the position of the spear, Lu Chen instantly understood what the Divine Martial Great Emperor was planning. The Divine Martial Great Emperor wanted to destroy the Spirit Gathering Array and make him lose his power. Lu Chen chuckled. Using this kind of trick in front of the current him was not so easy to succeed. In the next moment, Lu Chen's body disappeared in place, and when he reappeared, he had already arrived in front of the spear. In the next moment, Lu Chen swung his sword. Blood Soul Slash. The sword energy containing even more majestic power of slaughter was swung out, directly breaking the divine martial Great Emperor's technique. Seeing that Lu Chen had broken his technique, the divine martial Great Emperor's face darkened. Within his slaughter domain, Lu Chen could still use space teleportation at will. It seemed that the slaughter domain had no effect on Lu Chen at all. This was troublesome. Lu Chen had not yet taken the initiative to attack. Once Lu Chen took the initiative to attack, none of them would be able to resist Lu Chen's technique. The divine martial Great Emperor then directly withdrew the slaughter domain. He turned his head slightly and his eyes instantly looked at Zantian on the heavenly mystery hall. He really wanted to know when Zantian was going to wait. Relying on these people, it was impossible to be Lu Chen's opponent. Now, if he wanted to destroy Lu Chen, only Zantian could do it himself. But Zantian was still watching there. The divine martial Great Emperor was not polite and directly named him and said, "Zantian, when are you going to wait?" It is even possible that he is not someone he can fight against now. Lu Chen clenched the god-slaying sword in his hand, preparing for a desperate fight. Zantian looked at Lu Chen and said, "I really didn't expect that you could grow to this point in this life." Hearing Zantian's words, Lu Chen was stunned. Zantian's words seemed as if they knew each other in their previous life. No, Zantian's words sounded as if he had been paying attention to his every life. Lu Chen asked coldly, "Who are you?" Zantian ignored Lu Chen's question and looked at the god-slaying sword in Lu Chen's hand. "This seat has a question. Where did you get these immortal artifacts from?" End of this chapter. 1233 Xuantian ran away. What Xu Tian couldn't understand the most was the origin of the two immortal artifacts on Lu Chen's body. When Lu Chen entered this universe, he didn't have any immortal artifacts. Moreover, Lu Chen had reincarnated hundreds of times, and he had never seen him take out any immortal artifacts in any of those lives. But now, he suddenly took out two immortal artifacts. Lu Chen sneered and said, "It seems you know quite a bit about this emperor. If that's the case, then you should also know the origin of these two immortal artifacts." Seeing that Lu Chen was unwilling to speak, Xu Tian didn't continue to ask. He said with a normal expression, "Forget it, this seat will soon know what's going on with these two immortal artifacts. After reincarnating for hundreds of lifetimes, your divine soul power probably isn't much left. Everything should come to an end." As soon as Xu Tian finished speaking, his body actually turned into starlight and dissipated directly. Seeing that Xu Tian had disappeared, the great emperors present were dumbfounded, especially the great emperors of the four major forces. They came with Xu Tian to encircle and suppress Lu Chen, but Xu Tian, the most powerful one, didn't do anything. He just said a few words to Lu Chen and then ran away. What does Xu Tian mean by this? Xu Tian ran away. So how could these people possibly be Lu Chen's opponents? Lu Chen also felt inexplicable at this time. He thought that Xu Tian was planning to attack him, and he even felt pressure, but the other party said a few strange words and then disappeared. However, Lu Chen also extracted some key information from Xu Tian's words. That is, Xu Tian is very likely the mastermind behind his constant reincarnation, and this is related to his divine soul power. Although he doesn't know why Xu Tian is doing this. In short, Xu Tian is likely his biggest enemy. But the question is, Xu Tian should want to put him to death, so why did this guy run away instead? Judging from Xu Tian's ability to attack the Great Xia Dynasty from afar, Xu Tian's strength is definitely above him. Even if he uses the spirit gathering array now, he probably wouldn't be Xu Tian's opponent, so why didn't Xu Tian attack directly? Could it be that he has some other plan? Forget it, now is not the time to think about these things. Since Xu Tian has run away, then it's time to clean up these people present. Thinking of this, Lu Chen immediately mobilized the power of slaughter. The next moment, a golden Dharma idol exactly like him appeared behind him. Lu Chen looked at the divine martial great emperor and the others in the distance and said, "Since you don't have any other means, then it's time for this emperor to take action." As he spoke, the power of slaughter on Lu Chen's body frantically gathered into the shattered god sword. Lu Chen's power of slaughter was even more ferocious than that of the divine martial great emperor. People would tremble uncontrollably just by seeing it from a distance. Even the divine martial great emperor, a 9th-level slaughter great emperor, felt his own power of slaughter retreat after sensing the power of slaughter released by Lu Chen. The blood color on the divine martial great emperor's body scattered, and his face became very ugly. He had calculated everything but didn't expect that Shu Tian would run away at this time. He originally thought that Lu Chen was a huge threat to Shu Tian, so Shu Tian would find a way to get rid of Lu Chen, but Shu Tian actually disappeared after saying a few words. Could it be that Shu Tian wants to use a borrowed knife to kill? First let Lu Chen solve them all, and then he will come out to solve Lu Chen. Thinking of this possibility, the power of slaughter on the divine martial great emperor's body became very manic. He always gets angry easily today for some reason. The divine martial great emperor quickly stabilized his emotions. He thought to himself, as expected, something is affecting him. The divine martial great emperor then released his divine sense to investigate the surrounding situation, but did not find anything affecting his sanity. However, he only did a simple investigation. Now is not the time to think about these things. Lu Chen is about to attack, and all of them great emperors combined are probably not Lu Chen's opponents. The Lord of Nirvana said at this time, "Everyone, quickly use all your trump cards, otherwise you won't have a chance to use them later." For top forces like them, it is impossible to not have any trump cards. As soon as the Lord of Nirvana finished speaking, the great emperors present took out their own trump cards. Only the divine martial great emperor still held the holy demon spear given to him by Shu Tian. His trump card is naturally not the holy demon spear, but he is still hesitating whether to use that magic weapon. He originally planned to keep it to deal with Shu Tian, but now it seems that if he can't even get through the current level, then there is no point in talking about dealing with Shu Tian. After thinking for a moment, the divine martial great emperor finally took out a skull staff from his space ring. This staff was snatched from the hands of aliens in the outer domain back then. The specific grade is unknown, but as long as he uses a part of his divine soul, he can make this staff exert great destructive power. Although the power is very great, the biggest drawback of this staff is that it can only be used by burning the divine soul. The divine soul is very important to a great emperor, so the divine martial great emperor only tested it when he obtained this magic weapon, and then never used it again. When he saw the staff in the divine martial great emperor's hand, Lu Chen felt a familiar aura, but he didn't remember when he had seen this staff. Moreover, this staff gave him a very dangerous feeling. Lu Chen then no longer hesitated and directly mobilized the colorful power formed by the convergence of the Great Tao. These colorful powers are formed by the convergence of various Great Tao powers. When these Great Tao powers are in Lu Chen's hands, because of the influence of the Tao of creation, Lu Chen can still control them from conflicting. But once these great Tao powers leave Lu Chen's body and touch other things, they will immediately conflict due to the loss of control. The fierce conflict of various great Tao powers will produce great destructive power, and this destructive power is even greater than the destructiveness of the power of slaughter. Seeing this scene, Lu Chen frowned. He had seen the effect of these black gases outside the Great Xia Dynasty. These black gases can turn great emperors into heavenly demons. He didn't expect that he would release these black gases just by causing the space to shatter. The divine martial great emperor and the others did not notice these black gases at all, and they did not know what kind of impact these black gases would have on them. The Lord of Nirvana used the power of Nirvana at this moment and shouted, "Phoenix feather clothes." And the Empress of Salvation took out a talisman and threw it into the air. A Chenkin Bagua diagram immediately appeared above the Empress of Salvation. Chenkin life-saving talisman. The magic weapons of the Empress of Salvation and the Lord of Nirvana are both defensive, but the Divine Martial Great Emperor's is different. The Divine Martial Great Emperor directly threw the staff in front of him, and then burned the power of his divine soul to ignite the two flames in the eyes of the skull on the staff. 1234 Weird Black Air. The moment the Divine Martial Great Emperor lit up the skull staff in his hand, a strange wave of power spread in all directions. When that power passed through Lu Chen's body, Lu Chen couldn't help but shudder. What kind of power is this? Why does it feel even more terrifying than the power of origin? And the other 9th level Great Emperors also had their own life-saving trump cards, and they barely blocked this sword. Seeing this scene, Lu Chen didn't feel too surprised. These are, after all, 9th level Great Emperors from the top forces in the universe, and it's normal to have some life-saving trump cards on them, so naturally they wouldn't be so easy to deal with. However, his first sword was just a tentative attack. These 9th level Great Emperors had already consumed a lot of spiritual power just by blocking the first sword. It wouldn't be so easy for them to take the second sword. Immediately, Lu Chen mobilized the power of the 7 colors again, and then unleashed another sword. This sword was the same as before. Wherever the sword energy passed, the space shattered inch by inch, and more black gas emerged. At this time, the Divine Martial Great Emperor, holding the staff, also completely activated the staff in his hand. The Divine Martial Great Emperor shouted coldly, "Soul devouring of absolute fate." The next moment, countless demons were released from the staff. The strength of these demons was actually all at the Great Emperor realm. Seeing that the Divine Martial Great Emperor had actually summoned demons, everyone present was stunned. The Nirvana Lord and others never expected that the Divine Martial Great Emperor could actually drive demons. Lu Chen also didn't expect that demons could be driven by cultivators. Moreover, the demons summoned by the Divine Martial Great Emperor were all at the Great Emperor realm, and their strength was very powerful. Just by coming out of the staff, the demonic power raging in their bodies made the cultivators present feel very uncomfortable, and the spiritual power in their bodies couldn't circulate. However, these Great Emperor realm demons couldn't make any waves in front of Lu Chen. When Lu Chen saw these Great Emperor realm demons, a smile couldn't help but appear on his face. For him, dealing with demons was even easier than dealing with ordinary Great Emperors. The power in his body itself restrained demons. Lu Chen then unleashed another sword. He didn't use the power of other Great Emperors for this sword, but just used his own spiritual power to unleash a sword, so it seemed that the power was much smaller. However, when the sword energy he unleashed touched those Great Emperor realm demons, those demons instantly turned into smoke and dust and dissipated. Seeing this scene, the hand of the Divine Martial Great Emperor holding the soul-devouring staff of absolute fate trembled a little. How is this possible? Those are Great Emperor realm demons. Considering that demons can easily suppress cultivators across realms, there shouldn't be any problem for Great Emperor realm demons to face heavenly emperors, let alone Lu Chen is not a real heavenly emperor, but only temporarily has the strength to possibly reach the heavenly emperor. Moreover, looking at Lu Chen's appearance, Lu Chen didn't use his full strength at all, and easily solved the Great Emperor realm demons. In a short while, all the Great Emperor realm demons that were attacking disappeared into the air. When the last demon summoned by the staff died, the Divine Martial Great Emperor was also backlashed by the soul-devouring staff of absolute fate. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and the arm holding the soul-devouring staff of absolute fate instantly turned black. Black fine lines covered his whole body, looking very terrifying. Lu Chen said at this time, "It seems that you only have these trump cards. Since this is the case, then it's time to end it." As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Chen once again mobilized the power of the 7 colors formed by the gathering of all the power of the Great Tao. For a time, the sky in the outer realm appeared with colorful lights, which looked like auspicious omens descended from the sky. At this time, the great emperors in other places saw this scene and thought that there were treasures born here, and they came towards this direction one after another. As soon as Lu Chen finished speaking, he once again used the Blood Soul Slash. Before this sword was unleashed, the continent in the outer realm showed signs of collapse. At this moment, the whole world trembled. For a time, countless black gas spread from all directions into the outer realm. After some great emperors of the 4 major forces came into contact with those black gas, they immediately fell to the ground in pain and struggled continuously. And the 9th-level Great Emperors of the 4 major forces also felt very uncomfortable when they came into contact with those black gas, but they could barely circulate the spiritual power in their bodies to resist. The Nirvana Lord said in horror, "What is this ghost thing? Why can it suppress the Nirvana power of this seat?" Nirvana power is very important to the Nirvana Lord. Nirvana power can guarantee that even if he dies, he can be instantly resurrected. Even if the soul dissipates, as long as the Nirvana power is running. But the black gas that emerged from the space cracks can actually suppress Nirvana power, making Nirvana power unable to function, which means that once he dies this time, then he will really die. How can this not make the Nirvana Lord feel fear? Similarly, the Ferrying Life Empress also felt that the power of life in her body was suppressed by those black gas. It stands to reason that her power of life can dispel many things that are not good for the body, but she can't do anything about this black gas. In just a moment, some great emperors of the 4 major forces appeared in a demonized state. Their bodies gradually turned into a cloud of black mist, and the demonic power on their bodies became more and more intense. Lu Chen thought in his heart, "It's a good thing that the cultivators of the Great Xia Dynasty have all cultivated the techniques that can dispel demonic power. Otherwise the cultivators of the Great Xia Dynasty would probably have the same reaction if they touched these black gas." Thinking of this, Lu Chen glanced at the great emperors behind him. The black gas that spread out from the space cracks directly penetrated the shield constructed by the power of origin, but those black gas did not approach the great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty. Even if some black gas touched those great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty, it would quickly retreat, as if those black gas were afraid of something on those great emperors. Lu Chen instantly understood what was going on. It seems that after cultivating the demon burial art and the chaos demon slaying art, even this strange black gas can be resisted. But then again, why does his clone immediately lose contact with his soul after entering the abyss? His clone also cultivated the chaos demon slaying art, so it shouldn't be affected by these black gas. Lu Chen pondered for a moment, and didn't continue to dwell on this question. Forget it, let's deal with the matter in front of us first, and then slowly study what these black gas are later. End of this chapter. 1235 Aaron and Amp, X27, TU a Beast Guard. Lu Chen wasted no more time. He narrowed his eyes slightly, and the aura around him suddenly solidified. Then, he slowly raised the sword in his hand. On the hilt seemed to be infused with life at that moment, emitting a faint but chilling light. Immediately afterward, he swung his arm fiercely, and a powerful sword energy instantly surged towards the great emperors of the 4 major forces in the distance. The sword energy was like a Milky Way cascading down from the heavens, carrying an unmatched power. Wherever it passed, the air was torn apart, emitting a sharp whistling sound, and the space shattered inch by inch. Affected by the black gas, the bodies of those great emperors were imprisoned by invisible shackles, making them unable to move. Now, facing the surging, 7-colored sword energy, a trace of horror and despair flashed in their eyes. Their lips trembled slightly, but they couldn't even cry for help. Wherever the 7-colored sword energy passed, no matter what level of great emperor, they were all like fallen leaves swept up by a storm, without any resistance, all turned into dust, becoming a part of this desolate land of the outer realm. Seeing that the sword energy was getting closer and closer to the Divine Martial Great Emperor, the Divine Martial Great Emperor suddenly raised his head. At this moment, his eyes had turned black, like 2 bottomless pools. His entire body exuded a thick black gas, like a demon crawling out of the depths of hell, looking as if he had completely turned into a heavenly demon. Lu Chen also indeed felt the power of the heavenly demon from the Divine Martial Great Emperor, but he keenly noticed that the current Divine Martial Great Emperor was different from the other heavenly demons. In the depths of his eyes, there seemed to be a glimmer of his original sanity, like a candle flickering in the darkness, weak but still existing. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. The Divine Martial Great Emperor suddenly slowly raised the staff in his hand. Although the movement was slow, it revealed a strange power. Then, he laughed loudly at the sky of the outer realm, saying, "So that's how it is, so that's how it is." Ha 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 ha. His laughter was filled with a hint of madness and triumph, echoing in this silent space of the outer realm, making people shudder. Heavenly Emperor. I am finally going to become a Heavenly Emperor. As soon as he finished speaking, a strange power fluctuation was released from the staff. The power spread in the air like ripples. Immediately afterward, a black vortex actually appeared in front of the Divine Martial Great Emperor. The center of the vortex exuded a powerful suction force, as if it could devour everything. Before Lu Chen could react, the Divine Martial Great Emperor's body was directly sucked into the vortex, disappearing without a trace. This sudden change stunned Lu Chen. His brows furrowed tightly, and his eyes were full of shock and doubt. He had already used a power close to that of a heavenly emperor to seal off the surrounding space. Why was the Divine Martial Great Emperor still able to break through the space? This question swirled in his mind, leaving him completely puzzled. After the Divine Martial Great Emperor escaped, the Great Emperors of the four major forces were all eliminated by Lu Chen's powerful sword energy. Lu Chen's sword directly cleared the field. However, after solving the people of the four major forces, Lu Chen could feel that the power of the Great Emperors behind him was also almost exhausted. Their aura became weak, and their faces were a little pale, which made Lu Chen a little worried. It seemed that although the spirit gathering array was useful, at his rate of consumption, even if 100 Great Emperors were added together, it would not be enough for him to make a few moves. It seemed that he should not use his power randomly in the future. If he could solve it all at once, it was best to solve it all at once. Then, Lu Chen dispelled the spirit gathering array. His body leapt lightly, flew to a place with a space crack, and then carefully explored the black gas. When his hand was about to touch a trace of black gas floating in the air, the black gas, like a frightened beast, directly dodged, looking as if it had consciousness. Lu Chen could clearly feel that these black gases were afraid of the spiritual power in his body, so they avoided it like this. His heart stirred, and he directly circulated the spiritual power in his body, surrounding a ball of black gas, intending to explore the composition of this black gas and see what was going on with this black gas. As a result, as soon as his spiritual power came into contact with the black gas in the air, the black gas, like paper burned by a raging fire, instantly dissipated directly, making it impossible for him to explore the composition of this black gas. At this moment, the outer realm continent suddenly shook violently. The entire world seemed to be on the verge of collapse. The land beneath their feet trembled violently, and the distant mountains were also shaking, as if they would collapse at any time. Lu Chen quickly stabilized his body. His figure swayed slightly in the air, and then he quickly adjusted his posture, flew into the air, and scanned the surroundings vigilantly. Suddenly, a great emperor suddenly shouted loudly, "Look at the distance, what is that?" His voice was filled with a hint of panic, and his finger trembled as he pointed to the sky in the distance. As soon as the great emperor finished speaking, a huge black vortex suddenly appeared in the sky in the distance, and the vortex was rapidly growing larger. In the blink of an eye, the vortex had become as large as a low-level world, as if it was about to devour the entire sky. Immediately afterward, another great emperor said, "There seems to be something coming out of that vortex." His voice was full of shock and fear. Everyone followed his gaze, and saw a faint light flickering in the black vortex. Lu Chen frowned, staring straight at the black vortex. A trace of solemnity flashed in his eyes. He had a premonition that the people from another world that Empress Tianong spoke of were about to appear. In the next moment, a huge black palace slowly emerged from the vortex. Seeing the palace, everyone present looked very serious. The palace exuded a powerful pressure, making it difficult for people to breathe. The rank of this palace was probably not lower than the rank of the sword in Emperor Sha Tian's hand. Lu Chen couldn't help but clench the shattered god sword in his hand at this moment. His fingers exerted a slight force, and the cold touch from the hilt made him more clearly aware of the crisis before him. He could clearly feel that this palace was an immortal artifact. He didn't expect that in this world, besides himself, there were actually people who possessed immortal artifacts. As the palace slowly emerged from the vortex, the black vortex gradually closed. Suddenly, people heard a man's voice coming from within, so lively, is this welcoming this young master's arrival? The voice was filled with a hint of frivolousness and arrogance, appearing particularly abrupt in this silent space of the outer realm. Hearing this sentence, the great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty looked at each other, their faces revealing a confused expression. Obviously, none of them understood what this sentence meant. In their ears, this sentence was almost like gibberish noise. However, there was one person present who understood. Lu Chen looked at the palace in the sky in surprise. Although it was the first time he had heard this sentence, his mind actually subconsciously translated the meaning of this sentence. Lu Chen was a little puzzled. How could he understand this person's words? His heart was full of doubts, and he couldn't help but turn his head to look at the great emperors behind him, and asked, "Did you understand what that person said?" The great emperors shook their heads one after another. Not a single one of them understood. Lu Chen then looked at Empress Tianong. Empress Tianong replied expressionlessly, "A little." Just as Lu Chen was about to ask Empress Tianong if this was the language of people from another world, a man wearing white, luxurious clothes appeared in front of the palace. The man lowered his head and glanced at Lu Chen and the others from a high position. His eyes were filled with a hint of disdain and scrutiny, as if he was looking at a group of ants. Not even a ninth realm. Has the chaos beast given up resisting? The man's voice was filled with a hint of mockery. Hearing the man's words, Lu Chen basically judged that this man was from another world. He didn't care whether this man could understand his words or not, and directly asked, "What is the chaos beast you speak of?" His voice was filled with a hint of urgency and curiosity, wanting to find out the truth. Seeing that Lu Chen actually took the initiative to ask him, the man in the sky instead revealed an unbelievable expression. His eyes widened slightly, obviously somewhat surprised. Because he also understood what Lu Chen said. In the past, the beast guards he encountered would never talk to him. Basically, they would attack as soon as they saw him. The most important thing was that even if those beast guards communicated with each other, he couldn't understand what they were saying. But he actually understood the words that this person in front of him said. After recovering, Chu Zhengyu carefully looked at Lu Chen. His gaze swept over Lu Chen like a sharp sword, and then tentatively asked, "You are not a beast guard?" His voice was filled with a hint of uncertainty. Lu Chen looked at the white-clothed youth in the sky with a confused expression. "Beast guard, what is that?" His eyes were full of confusion, obviously not knowing anything about this term. Seeing that Lu Chen didn't know anything, Chu Zhengyu thought in his heart with doubt, this person should be a beast guard, right? The power on his body has the same origin as the chaos beast, but why can they communicate with each other? This is a bit unreasonable. Out of curiosity, Chu Zhengyu didn't plan to attack immediately. He continued to ask, "Do you know who you are?" Lu Chen replied, "The Lord of the Great Xia Dynasty." His voice was filled with a hint of pride, which was the symbol of his identity. Chu Zhengyu was full of questions. Great Xia Dynasty, what kind of force is that? He had never even heard of it. He frowned, seeming to be thinking about something, and then seemed to have thought of something. Wait, could it be that these beast guards also have countries? The Great Xia Dynasty, he said, is the force that this beast guard in front of him belongs to. End of this chapter. 1236. It seems you don an amp. X27, to know where this place is. After realizing what was happening, Chu Zhengyu tentatively asked, "Are you aware of where you are?" Lu Chen replied, "Isn't this the outer domain?" Chu Zhengyu seemed to consider something, then asked, "Do you mean that, as far as you're concerned, you've come to the outer domain?" Lu Chen was bewildered by Chu Zhengyu's question. Weren't they already in the outer domain? Chu Zhengyu immediately noticed the puzzled look on Lu Chen's face. At this moment, Chu Zhengyu muttered to himself, "This is interesting. It seems you don't know where this is." Chu Zhengyu stated directly, "The place you are in is on the tongue of the chaos beast." As soon as he said this, Lu Chen froze. The tongue of the chaos beast. Did that mean they had been inside the chaos beast's stomach all along? Although he had long felt that the operating mode of this universe was somewhat like a living organism, he had never thought about it in this way. If that was the case, did that mean these people from another world came from outside the chaos beast's body, Could his true identity also be the same as theirs? Seeing Lu Chen's shocked expression, Chu Zhengyu continued, I didn't expect that there would be someone among the beast guards who could talk to me. It seems your identity is quite unusual. Lu Chen came back to his senses and looked at Chu Zhengyu in the sky, saying, is there a possibility that I also come from the outside world? Chu Zhengyu was stunned by Lu Chen's words. He even doubted whether he had judged correctly. He subconsciously re-examined the power within Lu Chen. After a moment, he finally spoke, you beast guard are quite the joker. Your power originates from the same source as the Chaos Beast. How could you possibly come from the outside world? Lu Chen was stunned. The Heavenly Maiden of the Nine Heavens Academy. Who was that? He had never even heard of her. However, Lu Chen's brain quickly whirred, thinking of all the famous and powerful women in the universe. Soon, he locked onto one person. Then, he said, are you talking about the Heavenly Oracle woman? Chu Zhengyu looked at Lu Chen with a strange expression. Their Heavenly Maiden was indeed very good at calculating heavenly secrets, but when did she get the title of Heavenly Oracle Woman? Did this person really know their Heavenly Maiden? Chu Zhengyu then tentatively tried to trick Lu Chen, saying, all right, you beast guard, stop pretending. You just want to confuse me and then attack me. I advise you not to waste your time. Just attack directly. Without any hesitation, Lu Chen revealed the Shattering God Sword. The moment the Shattering God Sword appeared, Chu Zhengyu's face froze. A low-grade immortal artifact. Although it was low-grade, it was still an immortal artifact. Only the outside world could possibly have immortal artifacts. Chu Zhengyu quickly reacted, it seems you beast guard are quite lucky, actually able to pick up an immortal artifact dropped by one of our people. Chu Zhengyu could sense that the person speaking to him was only at the 5th level of the Great Emperor realm, just a small fry. Such a person could not possibly defeat those cultivators who possessed low-grade immortal artifacts, so the immortal artifact in this person's hand was likely picked up. Chu Zhengyu continued, it's a pity, even if you obtain the immortal artifact, you can't use it. The power of the beast guards originated from the same source as the Chaos Beast. The power of the Chaos Beast could not activate immortal artifacts. This was common knowledge, so in Chu Zhengyu's view, even if the immortal artifact fell into the hands of the beast guards, it would not pose any threat to them. However, soon Chu Zhengyu's worldview was shattered again. Lu Chen immediately activated the Shattering God Sword. The next moment, the pressure of the Shattering God Sword directly pressed down on Chu Zhengyu. Chu Zhengyu merely raised his hand and blocked the pressure of the Shattering God Sword. Both of their faces showed surprise. Chu Zhengyu was surprised that Lu Chen could activate the immortal artifact, while Lu Chen was surprised that Chu Zhengyu could easily block the pressure of the Shattering God Sword. This proved that the strength of this young man had probably reached the Heavenly Emperor realm. Chu Zhengyu thought to himself, could it be that this person in front of him really came from the outside? It was just that because he had stayed in the Chaos Beast's stomach for too long, he had been assimilated by the Chaos Beast, so he was able to use the power of the Chaos Beast. At this moment, Lu Chen said to the system, identify the information of the person in front of me. The next moment, the system's voice came, host does not have permission. Hearing the system's response, Lu Chen thought to himself, as expected, he had already touched the highest secret of this universe. He was probably really from the outside, just trapped in here all along, constantly reincarnating. That Zantian knew about his affairs, so it was likely that Zantian was the mastermind behind his constant reincarnation. Chu Zhengyu said at this moment, even if you really are a cultivator from the outside, now that you have been assimilated by the Chaos Beast and become a beast guard, you are still my enemy. As he spoke, the Heavenly Emperor power on Chu Zhengyu's body was released, and a terrifying pressure descended on the outer domain. All the great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty were instantly crushed to the ground by this pressure. Lu Chen was barely able to withstand the pressure, but his body was already bent over. Lu Chen gritted his teeth and tightly held the Shattering God Sword in his hand. So strong. This was the second person he had ever encountered who could make him feel fear. Chu Zhengyu continued, this young master is kind-hearted and will help you all to be free. As he spoke, Chu Zhenyu mobilized his immortal power, preparing to use a spell to deal with Lu Chen and the others below. The beast guards must be killed, otherwise, he would not be able to enter the Chaos Beast's stomach to find the Heavenly Maiden of their Nine Heavens Academy. Although these beast guards in front of him seemed non-aggressive, once they were controlled by the will of the Chaos Beast, they would inevitably launch an attack on them, these outsiders. Just as Chu Zhenyu was preparing to eliminate Lu Chen and the others, Lu Chen immediately shouted, "Form the formation." As soon as he spoke, the great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty tried their best to circulate the spiritual power in their bodies. The next moment, they constructed the Spirit Gathering Formation again. With the appearance of the Spirit Gathering Formation, all the pressure released from Chu Zhenyu's body was borne by Lu Chen, the formation's core. Lu Chen straightened his body, and a Dharma idol slowly emerged behind him. Seeing that the combined strength of these beast guards had actually caught up with him, Chu Zhenyu was once again stunned. He had been in the outer domain for some time, but he had never encountered such powerful beast guards. The power of these beast guards could actually combine to become stronger. Chu Zhenyu felt the pressure for a moment. Since he came in, he had not encountered any strong opponents, basically one-sided crushing. After gaining power, Lu Chen did not attack immediately. He still wanted to know more about the outside world. End of this chapter. 1237 The Truth About the Universe. Lu Chen's body swiftly soared into the air, flying as fast as an arrow to the same height as Chu Zhenyu. His aura subtly fluctuated, and his robes fluttered in the void. He looked directly at Chu Zhenyu and said, "I am not some beast guard. I just want to know what the situation is like outside." Seeing that Lu Chen remained restrained even after gaining such immense power, showing no intention of attacking, Chu Zhenyu narrowed his eyes slightly, beginning to believe Lu Chen's words. If these people were truly beast guards, with power comparable to his own, they wouldn't even bother acting. They would have unhesitatingly attacked him, not wasting time with conversation. After all, the duty of the beast guards is to eliminate all intruders without mercy. Chu Zhenyu was silent for a moment, then said, "Since you say you are from the outside world, how can you not know what the situation is like out there?" His voice carried a hint of doubt and scrutiny. Lu Chen frowned slightly, a look of helplessness on his face, and said, "I have reincarnated several times in this world and lost many memories." Hearing this, a flash of understanding crossed Chu Zhenyu's eyes. So, he had reincarnated and lost his memory. Then he continued, "How much do you remember about the outside world?" His gaze was fixed on Lu Chen, as if trying to discern something from his expression. Lu Chen shook his head slightly, answering, "Nothing at all." His expression held a trace of confusion and loss. This, Chu Zhenyu was slightly taken aback, and said directly, "Forget it, since you haven't attacked me, I don't mind wasting some time to tell you about the outside world." As he spoke, he raised his chin slightly, his expression carrying a hint of arrogance. "You are currently inside the body of a chaos beast, and outside the chaos beast is a boundless chaos sea. Once cultivators enter the chaos sea, it's basically impossible to survive." Chu Zhenyu paused slightly, his gaze sweeping over the surrounding dim space, as if seeing the chaos sea outside through this space. So most cultivators choose to hide inside the chaos beast's body, but there are beast guards inside the chaos beast's body, and these beast guards will attack us outsiders. Hearing this, a glint of light flashed in Lu Chen's eyes, and he immediately thought of the interdimensional stone that the system had rewarded him with. He suddenly understood what the system's interdimensional stone was for. The interdimensional stone was probably for leaving the chaos sea. If cultivators don't leave the chaos beast's body, they will either be assimilated into beast guards, killed by beast guards, or refined by the chaos beast. Chu Zhenyu frowned slightly, a look of seriousness on his face. Lu Chen was slightly silent, and said, "Didn't you say that it's hard for cultivators to survive in the chaos sea? If that's the case, isn't escaping from the chaos beast's body also a death sentence?" His voice carried a hint of doubt. Chu Zhenyu shook his head slightly, and said, "That's true, but it's still better than being refined by the chaos beast. Besides, maybe we can find a way to survive, but inside the Chaos Beast's body, we can only wait for death. His voice revealed a hint of firmness and hope. Hearing Chu Zhengyu's words, Lu Chen felt that there was some truth to it. He had reincarnated countless times in the Chaos Beast's belly, but he hadn't found a way to leave this world. He couldn't even remember his past memories. If he continued to reincarnate like this, maybe one day he would completely forget his past memories, and then he would truly become a native of the Chaos Beast's belly. And without the memories of his previous life, it was hard to say whether he could still reincarnate. Thinking of this possibility, Lu Chen suddenly felt a chill down his spine. If there was a life in which he couldn't even remember his past memories, then it would be difficult for him to become stronger, and he wouldn't be able to escape the epic calamity. If he couldn't escape the epic calamity, he would completely perish. The fact that he was alive now proved that he had survived countless epic calamities. Coupled with what Zhan Tian said, a huge conspiracy against him had already emerged in Lu Chen's mind. After all, he was a person with Earth's memories and had read many novels, so he was more sensitive to this kind of thing. He immediately suspected whether Zhan Tian was his enemy, but because Zhan Tian couldn't kill him, he wanted to use the Chaos Beast to get rid of him. Since Zhan Tian said that it was time to end, then Zhan Tian would definitely use some means to deal with him next. It seemed that he had to be careful next. Just as Lu Chen was thinking this, Chu Zhengyu said, "I have already told you about your situation. Next, it's your turn to answer a few of my questions." His voice carried a hint of seriousness. Lu Chen was slightly taken aback and asked, "What questions?" Chu Zhengyu asked directly, "Who is the heavenly mystery woman you mentioned?" His gaze was fixed on Lu Chen, his eyes carrying a hint of curiosity and scrutiny. Lu Chen pondered for a moment and replied, "She is a woman who is very good at deduction. She can deduce the time when the epic calamity will arrive, and she is relatively mysterious. I have never met her, but I have only heard some things about her." Hearing Lu Chen's answer, Chu Zhengyu fell silent. He thought to himself that being good at deduction was indeed consistent. But, if he entered the Chaos Beast's stomach, then it would probably be difficult for him to come out. Thinking of this, Chu Zhengyu continued to ask, "Besides being good at deduction, she should also be very powerful, right? What do you think of her strength?" His voice carried a hint of expectation and nervousness. Lu Chen frowned slightly and said, "Maybe she is very strong. I have never met her and cannot judge her specific strength, but she can spread the news of the epic calamity throughout the universe. From this point of view, her strength should not be weak." Chu Zhengyu thought to himself that if her strength was still very strong, then she was likely their heavenly maiden from the Nine Heavens Academy. Their heavenly maiden had said that she was going to the stomach of the Chaos Beast to see if she could find a way to leave the Chaos Sea. Chu Zhengyu looked at Lu Chen again, and then said, "If you really came from the outside, then there is no need to fight me. We have a common enemy." His voice carried a hint of kindness and cooperation. "You can take me to your universe. I want to see the heavenly mystery woman you mentioned." His eyes carried a hint of expectation and determination. Lu Chen agreed without hesitation, "Okay." After all, Chu Zhengyu was a person who came from the outside. As long as he could get along with Chu Zhengyu, he would be able to learn more about what was happening outside. For example, what was outside the Chaos Sea. Lu Chen needed to understand these things. But just as Lu Chen was about to remove the spirit gathering array and take Chu Zhengyu back to their universe, Lu Chen's other clone in the outer realm suddenly discovered that the teleportation channel they had come from had been closed. In other words, they could no longer return to their universe through that teleportation channel, which was the stomach of the Chaos Beast. Lu Chen was slightly taken aback, turned his head to look at Empress Tianong, and said, "The teleportation channel has been closed. How did you leave the outer realm back then?" Empress Tianong said coldly, "Follow me." Her voice was as cold as ice, without any emotional fluctuations. After she finished speaking, Empress Tianong turned around and prepared to lead Lu Chen. Empress Tianong also understood what Chu Zhengyu had just said. Empress Tianong also suspected that she was not from this universe. Although she wanted to kill now, understanding her identity was more important to her at this time. Hearing Empress Tianong's voice, Chu Zhengyu was slightly stunned. He could also understand this woman's words, which meant that this woman was also from the outside. However, the power on her body was the same as the man in front of him, and it was of the same origin as the Chaos Beast. Obviously, she had been assimilated by the Chaos Beast. Chu Zhengyu suddenly became worried. Their heavenly maiden had run to the stomach of the Chaos Beast. Could it be that she had also been assimilated by the Chaos Beast? If that was the case, then it would be troublesome. His brows furrowed slightly, and a look of worry appeared on his face. End of this chapter. 1238. Back to the main universe. Chu Zhengyu looked at the back of the Heavenly Rainbow Empress and asked Lu Chen, "Is she also from the outside world?" Lu Chen said directly, "Yes." Lu Chen now felt that any woman related to him was likely to have entered this world with him. He had been reincarnating in the stomach of the Chaos Beast, perhaps to find all the women who had entered this world with him. Just as Lu Chen was distracted, Chu Zhengyu's voice came again. "I'm a little curious, since you have forgotten your previous memories, how do you know you are from the outside world?" Lu Chen said lightly, "I have forgotten other memories, but I remember that I am from the outside world." Chu Zhengyu said, "If you reincarnate again, I'm afraid you will even forget that you are from the outside world. By then, you will be completely assimilated by the Chaos Beast and become a beast guard of the Chaos Beast." Just as Lu Chen was about to say something, he suddenly felt danger approaching. Lu Chen frowned, raised his head, and quickly looked around. The feeling of danger was getting closer and closer, but he didn't see any enemies approaching. Seeing Lu Chen suddenly become vigilant, Chu Zhengyu asked in confusion, "What are you doing, fellow Taoist?" The crowd looked at Lu Chen, wondering what had happened. Lu Chen released his divine sense, calmly perceiving the situation in the outer domain. At this moment, two huge vortexes suddenly appeared above them. One vortex sucked Lu Chen and the emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty away, and the other vortex sucked Chu Zhengyu and his palace in. When Lu Chen reacted, he found that they had returned to their original universe, and Chu Zhengyu was nowhere to be seen. Lu Chen immediately suspected that all of this was done by Zantian, but he really didn't understand. Zantian's strength should be similar to his own. Why didn't Zantian attack him when the emperors of the four major forces were present earlier, but kept dragging on? What was he waiting for? Seeing that this trip to the outer domain ended like this, the emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty were dumbfounded. They originally thought that this trip to the outer domain would bring them some opportunities. Even if there were no opportunities, they could perform well in front of Emperor Xia. As a result, they were sent back after only arriving in the outer domain for a short time. Who did this? To be precise, what kind of person has such terrifying power that they can directly send so many of them back to this universe? The Heavenly Rainbow Empress looked at Lu Chen, who was distracted, and asked, "What are you going to do next?" After hearing Lu Chen say that he was from the outside world, the Heavenly Rainbow Empress basically guessed Lu Chen's thoughts. Lu Chen definitely wanted to leave this universe, and he was probably already thinking about what method to use to leave this world. Lu Chen came back to his senses, looked into the eyes of the Heavenly Rainbow Empress, and said, "Let's take it one step at a time. We still have a biggest enemy to deal with." Lu Chen didn't think he could easily leave this world. If he could leave, his previous lives would have left after reincarnating so many times. At this time, Lu Chen raised his head and looked at the surrounding starry sky, and then said to himself, "I really didn't expect that such a beautiful universe is actually inside a creature's stomach." The Heavenly Rainbow Empress asked, "Do you believe what that person said?" Lu Chen said, "It's probably true." The Heavenly Rainbow Empress didn't say anything more. Not only did Lu Chen believe it, but even she herself believed it. But believing is believing. They don't have the ability to leave this universe now. At this time, Lu Chen found that his clone was still in the outer domain, so he thought about using his clone to find Chu Zhengyu. If he could find him, he would be able to get more information about the outside world. Then he controlled his clone and began to act. At the same time, Central Star Region, Red Rain World. Emperor Taikong led the immortal boat of the Qingyu Holy Land back to the Central Star Region quickly. What they didn't expect was that the heaven-ranked teleportation array of the Celestial Secrets Pavilion could also be open to them. This is why they were able to return to the Central Star region so quickly. Emperor Taikong looked at the Central Star region in the distance and couldn't help but feel a little emotional. He didn't know if he would be able to defeat the Lord of Qingyu and seize control of the Qingyu Holy Land this time he returned to the Qingyu Holy Land. At this time, an emperor came to Emperor Taikong and said, "Holy Son, we don't actually have to go back. With your current strength, we can just find a place to survive the tribulation ourselves during the era tribulation. Why must we seize the Qingyu Holy Land? The current Qingyu Holy Land is like a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. The Lord of Qingyu probably already knows that the people he sent have fallen. Maybe the Lord of Qingyu is already thinking about how to get rid of the traitors." After hearing the words of the emperor beside him, Emperor Taikong sighed. In fact, he also thought about simply not returning to the Qingyu Holy Land. Anyway, the contradiction between him and the Lord of Qingyu would soon be made public. And the Qingyu Holy Land is in the hands of the Lord of Qingyu, and the ancient formations are also controlled by the Lord of Qingyu. If they fight the Lord of Qingyu in the Qingyu Holy Land, they may not be the Lord of Qingyu's opponents. But Emperor Taikong considered a problem, that is, they don't know where the tribulation place is, and they don't know how to find it specifically. They only know that there is a probability of surviving in the place where the eras intersect, and the place where the eras intersect is likely to appear in the Central Star region. Emperor Taikong's return this time is on the one hand to obtain specific methods of finding the tribulation place from the Lord of Qingyu, and on the other hand to prevent other emperors from fighting for territory. No one can say for sure whether there is a limit to the number of people in the tribulation place, so the major forces will definitely fight to the death for this bit of territory in the Central Star region. If they don't control the Qingyu Holy Land, it is almost impossible for them to occupy a piece of land in the core area of the Central Star region with their current number of people. At this time, Emperor Taikong said to the emperors in front of him, "This time we go back. One is to get more detailed information about the tribulation place, and the other is to avoid being driven out of the Central Star region by other forces at that time." It is not easy for Emperor Taikong, a 9th-level emperor, to join other forces. The main reason is that there is no effective method to control the emperor except for Lu Chen in this universe. There is also a chain of suspicion between emperors, especially between 9th-level emperors. Most of the 9th-level emperors are thinking about taking that step and breaking through to become the heavenly emperor, so the 9th-level emperors have a strong guard against other 9th-level emperors. The most important point is that the Qingyu Holy Land took the lead in issuing an announcement to attack the Great Xia Dynasty. This clearly shows that the 9th-level emperor of the Qingyu Holy Land is afraid that Lu Chen will break through to become the heavenly emperor in advance, so he attacked the Great Xia Dynasty. At this time, Emperor Taikong said that he doesn't want to become the heavenly emperor. "I'm afraid the 9th-level emperors of other super forces won't believe it." End of this chapter. 1239 Emperor Taikong surrenders. Just as Emperor Taikong was contemplating how to seize the Clearyu Holy Land, he suddenly sensed a terrifying aura passing by not far from them. That dark aura made all the emperors present feel a chill, as if they were being targeted by some great horror. Emperor Taikong's face instantly turned extremely serious. He immediately released his divine sense to investigate the surrounding star field, and soon he sensed a strong demonic celestial power. That demonic celestial power suppressed his divine sense, making him feel very uncomfortable. Emperor Taikong quickly withdrew his divine sense, his face turning extremely pale. Seeing that Emperor Taikong's condition was not good, the emperors quickly expressed their concern. "Holy Son, what's wrong with you? Holy Son, what did you discover? Holy Son, you sense that terrifying aura too, right?" Emperor Taikong did not speak, his gaze fixed on the direction of the Divine Moon Dynasty. He clearly sensed that the terrifying aura was heading straight for the Divine Moon Dynasty. Emperor Taikong thought to himself that to leave behind such a strong demonic celestial power, the demonic celestial heading to the Divine Moon Dynasty must be at least in the 9th level. They had seen a 9th level demonic celestial in the Great Xia Dynasty, and the aura of the demonic celestial just now seemed even more terrifying than the 9th-level demonic celestial they had seen in the Great Xia Dynasty. Thinking of this, a drop of cold sweat involuntarily appeared on Emperor Tai Kang's forehead. Such a powerful demonic celestial appearing in the central star field, he couldn't imagine what would happen in the central star field next. Emperor Tai Kang was silent for a while before saying, "Everyone, return to the Clear You Holy Land at the fastest speed." Hearing this voice, everyone was stunned. An emperor scolded, "Who is it, pretending to be a ghost here?" Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. As soon as the emperor finished speaking, a white figure suddenly appeared in front of their immortal ship. When everyone saw Lu Chen's appearance clearly, the emperors of the Clear You Holy Land were unable to accept it for a while. How could Lu Chen appear in front of them? They used the Heavenly Mystery Tower's heavenly-grade teleportation array and had already traveled at the fastest speed, but Lu Chen had instead run ahead of them. Wasn't there a dangerous cosmic abyss in front of the Great Xia Dynasty? How did Lu Chen cross that cosmic abyss? Emperor Tai Kang looked at Lu Chen and said, "How did you cross that cosmic abyss?" At that time, they had personally seen their emperor turn into a demonic celestial when crossing the cosmic abyss, and it was still a 9th-level emperor. How could Lu Chen cross the abyss without any problems? The most important thing was how could Lu Chen have such a fast speed to catch up, and even run ahead of them to block the road? Lu Chen said indifferently, "When you join the Great Xia Dynasty, you will know what's going on." Lu Chen's words stunned the emperors present again. Join the Great Xia Dynasty? Wasn't Lu Chen here to hunt them down? Why would he invite them to join the Great Xia Dynasty? Seeing these people with disbelief on their faces, Lu Chen said directly, "You may not know the current situation of this universe. Let me tell you directly, my clone has already destroyed most of the emperors of the 4 major forces led by the Heavenly Mystery Tower in the outer domain. Although Emperor Shenwu and the Tower Master of the Heavenly Mystery Tower escaped, their power is gone, and soon the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet will advance into the central star field." The emperors of the Clear You Holy Land looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion. Lu Chen's clone destroyed most of the emperors of the 4 major forces led by the Heavenly Mystery Tower. Really? If this is the case, I am afraid that soon no super force in the central star field will dare to be enemies with the Great Xia Dynasty. Of course, there is another possibility. That is, all the remaining super forces will unite to fight against the Great Xia Dynasty. However, with the strength Lu Chen has shown so far, even if all the super forces really unite, they may not be a match for the Great Xia Dynasty. Emperor Tai Kang hesitated for a moment, then looked at the emperors behind him who had been following him. He couldn't make the decision on such a matter alone. At this time, the emperors of the Clear You Holy Land looked at each other, and finally they all said to Emperor Tai Kang, "Holy Son, we listen to you." These emperors were not fools either. They knew very well that even if Lu Chen was lying and his clone had not destroyed the emperors of the 4 major forces in the outer domain, their situation would still be very dangerous with Lu Chen's current strength. If they don't surrender at this time, it is estimated that only destruction awaits them next. And now that they think about it, the Great Xia Dynasty does not seem to be bad. The Great Xia Dynasty is now a top force in the universe, and those old Holy Lands may not be a match for the Great Xia Dynasty. Anyway, the Clear You Holy Land has no way to deal with the Great Xia Dynasty. Moreover, they had just sensed a powerful demonic celestial appearing in the central star field. They didn't know what kind of storm would be set off in the central star field next. At this time, finding a reliable backer was a good choice for them. Hearing the emperors say they would listen to him, Emperor Tai Kang immediately understood what these emperors were thinking. Obviously, they themselves had no intention of fighting. Emperor Tai Kang then looked at Lu Chen in the distance. "Okay, we surrender to the Great Xia Dynasty." Lu Chen was a little surprised. He originally thought it would take some effort, but he didn't expect it to be done with just a few words. Lu Chen then said, "Before surrendering, there is one more thing you need to do." Hearing this, Emperor Tai Kang frowned and immediately asked, "What is it?" Emperor Tai Kang suspected that Lu Chen wanted them to submit a certificate of loyalty, to let them carry out some more dangerous tasks. Lu Chen said, "Don't be nervous, you just need to release your divine sense." Emperor Taikong looked at Lu Chen with a puzzled expression. Release divine sense. What to do? Under normal circumstances, releasing divine sense means being controlled by the other party, but there is no way to control the emperor in this universe, so Emperor Taikong and the others did not understand why Lu Chen wanted them to release their divine sense. However, the emperors present did not hesitate and directly released their divine sense. Lu Chen then used the soul control technique to leave a soul imprint in the depths of the souls of the emperors. When Emperor Taikong and the others sensed the imprint in the depths of their souls, they finally woke up. Lu Chen can actually control the emperor. Now they regretted it, but it was too late. Emperor Taikong was a little helpless. How could he forget that Lu Chen might be the reincarnation of the heavenly emperor? Others may not have a way to control the emperor, but that doesn't mean the reincarnated heavenly emperor doesn't. 1240 Then I will help you. The great Emperor Taikong did not continue to dwell on the matter of being controlled. He could also sense that this divine soul imprint would only take effect when they wanted to betray Lu Chen, and would not affect them under normal circumstances. Now that they had surrendered to the Great Xia Dynasty, they should prioritize the interests of the Great Xia Dynasty. Lu Chen had just said that the Great Xia Dynasty would soon advance into the Central Star region, which reminded Great Emperor Taikong of the demonic power he had sensed earlier. Subsequently, Great Emperor Taikong said to Lu Chen, "I wonder if your majesty has sensed a powerful demon entering the Central Star region earlier." Great Emperor Taikong thought to himself that since Lu Chen had appeared before them, Lu Chen had most likely sensed it as well. Lu Chen said, "I sensed it. It's likely the Great Emperor Shenwu." Hearing Lu Chen's words, everyone was stunned. Great Emperor Shenwu. The demon that exuded demonic power was Great Emperor Shenwu. Soon everyone reacted. It was not impossible. After all, they had just seen a ninth realm Great Emperor turn into a demon before their eyes. However, that demon was ultimately easily dealt with by Lu Chen. Great Emperor Taikong tentatively asked, "Now that your majesty knows that the demon is Great Emperor Shenwu, I wonder if your majesty plans to attack the Shenyu dynasty next." Lu Chen said, "The matter of Great Emperor Shenwu will be put aside for now. Our main task now is to continue expanding." Regardless of whether they were currently inside the belly of the Chaos Beast, Lu Chen had to rely on the dynasty's fortune of the Great Xia Dynasty to become stronger. It was now too difficult for him to get his wives and concubines pregnant. Even using a celestial realm clone, he couldn't get his wives and concubines pregnant. This was clearly not a problem of realm, but some kind of rule was restricting him. At first, he thought it was because his realm was too high that his wives and concubines couldn't get pregnant. Later, he deliberately created some bodies with lower realms, but these bodies also couldn't get his wives and concubines pregnant, so he couldn't continue to blame his realm being too high. He was, after all, a great emperor who controlled the power of creation. A great emperor who controlled the power of creation couldn't create small lives, which was clearly not right. Fortunately, he had become strong enough now, and he no longer had much reliance on getting stronger through having children. What Lu Chen was most worried about now was not Great Emperor Shenwu, but Xuantian. He didn't know where Xuantian was hiding. He would not have peace of mind until Xuantian was dead. Great Emperor Taikong then said, "If your majesty does not plan to attack the Shenyu dynasty, you can first try to take down the Qingyu Holy Land. Most of the people in the Qingyu Holy Land support me. As long as I return to the Qingyu Holy Land and solve the Qingyu Master, then the Qingyu Holy Land and the star regions controlled by the Qingyu Holy Land will all belong to the Great Xia Dynasty." Hearing Great Emperor Taikong's words, Lu Chen pondered for a moment. They did need a teleportation point in the core area of the Central Star region. With a teleportation point, it would be more convenient for them to attack the Central Star region in the future. Thinking of this, Lu Chen said, "Okay, I will immediately send a large army to attack the Qingyu Holy Land." Seeing Lu Chen agree to his proposal, Great Emperor Taikong was very happy. He had long disliked the Qingyu Master, and now he finally found an opportunity to get rid of the Qingyu Master. He believed that with Lu Chen's strength, Even if the Qingyu master kept shrinking in the Qingyu Holy Land and mobilized the ancient formations of the Qingyu Holy Land, he would not be a match for Lu Chen. Lu Chen kept his word. He did not hesitate and directly asked Great Emperor Thunder to take dozens of Great Emperors and Great Emperor Taikong with them to the Qingyu Holy Land. At the same time, outer domain. Those top forces did not know about the 4 great forces, but many great emperors from the top forces were planning to return. Most people, after entering the outer domain, found that the outer domain was empty and there was nothing, let alone the treasures that the Heavenly Mystery Pavilion said could allow 9th Realm great emperors to take that step. More and more great emperors realized that they had been played by the Heavenly Mystery Pavilion. Soon, many great emperors also understood why the Heavenly Mystery Pavilion would spread such false information. The only force in the entire universe that could make the Heavenly Mystery Pavilion go to such lengths to set up a situation was the Great Xia Dynasty. After figuring out that all of this was a scheme set up by the 4 great forces led by the Heavenly Mystery Pavilion to deal with the Great Xia Dynasty, the great emperors of those top forces cursed and went to the junction of the universe and the outer domain, preparing to return to the main universe. At the same time, within a certain star region, a purple immortal ship was slowly drifting in the void. Zhan Qingyan, dressed in a purple veil, stood at the front of the immortal ship, looking in the direction of the central star region, and murmured, "It seems it's coming to an end." I didn't expect that he could turn defeat into victory after being refined by the Chaos Beast for so many years. Then, I will give you a hand. As soon as she finished speaking, a dark black power was released from Zhan Qingyan's body. This power quickly spread throughout the universe. When some cultivators felt this dark power, they directly turned into demons. At the same time, Shenyu Dynasty. After transforming into a demon, Great Emperor Shenwu returned to the Shenyu Dynasty and was besieged by the great emperors of the Shenyu Dynasty. As a result, Great Emperor Shenwu just raised his hand slightly, and all the great emperors were suppressed on the ground by the pressure emanating from him and could not move. Great Emperor Shenwu's scarlet eyes looked at the great emperors lying in front of him, and he said coldly, "You don't even recognize me. Or do you want to rebel?" Hearing Great Emperor Shenwu's voice, the great emperors present were stunned. How did Great Emperor Shenwu become a demon? They had just felt that this person looked a bit like Great Emperor Shenwu, but he exuded a strong demonic power. They thought that a newly born demon had come to attack the Shenyu Dynasty, but they did not expect that it was Great Emperor Shenwu who had returned. A great emperor lying on the ground mustered up the courage to ask, Your Majesty, what is this?" Great Emperor Shenwu said coldly, "I was schemed against by Xuantian, so I became like this, neither human nor ghost. Forget it, now is not the time to talk about this. Since I am not dead, then let Xuantian know what the consequences will be for scheming against me." As soon as Great Emperor Shenwu finished speaking, he felt a dark power sweep through his body. This dark power actually resonated with the demonic power in his body. For a time, the demonic power in his body became even stronger, and his realm was also rapidly increasing. Great Emperor Shenwu was stunned for a moment. What was going on? Although he knew when he was in the outer domain that he could easily break through to the Heavenly Emperor realm after transforming into a demon, he did not expect that it would so quickly and easily raise his realm to the Heavenly Emperor realm. Feeling the majestic power in his body, Great Emperor Shenwu couldn't help roaring, "Heavenly Emperor! Heavenly Emperor! I have finally become a Heavenly Emperor!" Immediately, a Heavenly Emperor's pressure swept through the entire universe. For a time, all the cultivators in the universe felt this terrifying pressure. 1241 This is what it feels like to be a demon. Whether it was Lu Chen's clone or Lu Chen's main body far away in the Heavenly Chen world, both felt the pressure from the Heavenly Emperor. That pressure was very special. When the pressure descended, it was as if a voice in the universe was conveyed to people's minds, making them submit to this pressure. This was very similar to the scenes recorded in the ancient era when the Heavenly Emperor was born. That is to say, a true Heavenly Emperor has been born in the universe at this moment. On the way to the Qingyu Holy Land, the great Emperor Taikong and others felt this terrifying pressure, and looked at Lu Chen's clone with surprise and uncertainty on their faces. They had the divine soul imprint left by Lu Chen in the depths of their divine souls, so they could feel that the aura of the new heavenly emperor was completely different from the aura on Lu Chen's body, that is to say, someone had become a heavenly emperor before Lu Chen. For a time, Great Emperor Taikong and others wanted to cry without tears. They originally thought they had found a strong backer, but they didn't expect that someone would take that step so quickly. According to the historical records of the ancient era, only one heavenly emperor can be born in a universe, which means that Lu Chen can no longer become a heavenly emperor. And after the new heavenly emperor is born, he will inevitably settle accounts with Lu Chen, the so-called reincarnation of the heavenly emperor. With the power of the heavenly emperor, the current Great Xia Dynasty may not be able to resist. Lu Chen turned his head and glanced at Great Emperor Taikong and others, and seeing that they were all staring at him, Lu Chen chuckled and said, "What are you looking at me for? If the Great Emperor Shenwu becomes the heavenly emperor, then it is basically no threat to him, because the power in his body is to restrain the power of the heavenly demon. The demonic power that the Great Emperor Shenwu relies on will become a burden when facing him." This made Lu Chen relieved. If someone else had taken that step, he would have to worry about it, but as for the Great Emperor Shenwu, he basically didn't have to worry about it. Lu Chen was just a little confused as to why the Great Emperor Shenwu broke through after becoming a demon. Could it be that the power of the heavenly demon can help the Ninth Realm Great Emperor take that step? Forget it, it's useless to think about this now. Let's hurry to the Qingyu Holy Land and take down the Qingyu Holy Land as soon as possible, and then build a holy level teleportation array in the Qingyu Holy Land. The Great Emperor Shenwu has broken through and become a heavenly emperor. I don't know what kind of tricks he will play next. Let's build the teleportation array first, so that the Great Xia Dynasty can attack the Shenyu Dynasty more easily. Lu Chen didn't know at this time that the current Great Emperor Shenwu had no intention of attacking him at all. He now just wanted to completely destroy the Heavenly Mystery Tower. In the eyes of the Great Emperor Shenwu, the reason why he became a demon was because of Zantian. If Zantian hadn't run away at that time, it would have been impossible for them to face Lu Chen directly. He now seriously suspects that Zantian was trying to kill someone with a knife, letting Lu Chen and them fight each other, and then Zantian would reap the benefits from behind. At this time, the entire Shenyu dynasty was shrouded in the demonic power released by the Great Emperor Shenwu. More and more cultivators were affected by the demonic power and transformed into unconscious demons, and although those great emperors were also transforming into demons, they retained their consciousness like the Great Emperor Shenwu. After feeling the improvement brought by the power of the heavenly demon, before the Great Emperor Shenwu could speak, a great emperor took the initiative to say to the Great Emperor Shenwu, "Your Majesty, I implore you to take the initiative to lead troops to attack the Heavenly Mystery Tower. Help Your Majesty destroy this confidant." The Great Emperor Shenwu glanced at the great emperors in the hall. The remaining great emperors of the Shenyu dynasty had basically been transformed into demons by him, and their strength had also become stronger. He also used the power of the heavenly demon to forcibly promote some quasi-emperors to great emperors, and the number of great emperors in the Shenyu dynasty suddenly increased to more than 1,000. His heart was extremely inflated, and he believed that no force in this universe was a match for the Shenyu dynasty. The Great Emperor Shenwu then said, "No need, I will take action myself." He got up directly from the dragon chair, and then released his divine sense to explore the location of the Heavenly Mystery Tower. The divine sense of the Heavenly Emperor can spread throughout the entire universe. In just a moment, he sensed the current situation of the Heavenly Mystery Tower. Some great emperors in the Heavenly Mystery Tower who were proficient in deduction techniques had already calculated that they were in great trouble, so the entire Heavenly Mystery Tower was in a very chaotic state. Some great emperors took off their Heavenly Mystery Tower robes and fled the Heavenly Mystery Tower, trying to get rid of the crisis of the Heavenly Mystery Tower, but even if they did so, the cause and effect on their bodies was still there, and the divine sense of the Great Emperor Shenwu could immediately distinguish whether they were great emperors of the Heavenly Mystery Tower. Huh! The Great Emperor Shenwu let out a puzzled sound after scanning the entire universe with his divine sense. He found that his divine sense could not cover the Great Xia Dynasty, and he could not sense a few people. One was Lu Chen, the other was Zantian, and the other was Tianji Envy. Lu Chen and Zantian were likely still in the outer domain, so it was normal that he could not sense them, but Zan Qingyan should not have gone to the outer domain. Why was there no trace of her in this universe, and she had not even left any cause and effect in this universe, as if she did not belong to this universe. The great Emperor Shenwu didn't think much about it. He would destroy the Heavenly Mystery Tower first, and the next moment, his body disappeared in the hall, and when he reappeared, he had already arrived outside the world where the headquarters of the Heavenly Mystery Tower was located. Those great emperors of the Heavenly Mystery Tower who had not had time to escape were so frightened that they ran towards the Tianji Tower of the Heavenly Mystery Tower after feeling the terrifying aura outside. The Tianji Tower is also a defensive treasure, and they fantasized that they could rely on the Tianji Tower to block the attack of the demon outside. Seeing the people from the Heavenly Mystery Tower flocking towards the Tianji Tower, the great Emperor Shenwu snorted coldly, and then raised his hand, and a terrifying demonic power surged towards the Tianji world like a wave. The moment the demonic power came into contact with the cultivators in the Tianji world, the blood and vitality of those cultivators were instantly drawn away. The great Emperor Shenwu immediately felt a burst of comfort all over his body, and the great Emperor Shenwu sighed in his heart, so this is what it feels like to become a demon. Cool, so cool. For a time, the great Emperor Shenwu became more and more eager for the blood and vitality of the cultivators. At the same time, he found that the fear of those cultivators would make him feel more comfortable after entering his body. 1242 Tianji building was destroyed. With the godly martial great emperor's attack, the people in the Heavenly Secrets world were quickly wiped out by him, leaving only some key members of the Heavenly Secrets Tower hiding inside the Heavenly Secrets Tower. Looking at the Heavenly Secrets Tower standing tall in the Heavenly Secrets world, the godly martial great emperor sneered and once again mobilized the power of the Heavenly Devil. The power of the Heavenly Devil instantly gathered into a huge palm print, directly striking the Heavenly Secrets Tower. The moment the palm print formed by the power of the Heavenly Devil touched the Heavenly Secrets Tower, the spire of the Heavenly Secrets Tower shattered inch by inch, and soon the entire Heavenly Secrets Tower began to collapse. The cultivators inside the Heavenly Secrets Tower sensed that the Heavenly Secrets Tower was collapsing, and they were so frightened that they fled from the various exits of the Heavenly Secrets Tower. Some great emperors tried to leave the Heavenly Secrets world through space teleportation, but found that they could not break through the godly martial great emperor's spatial blockade no matter what. Seeing those great emperors struggling, the godly martial great emperor snorted coldly, and then said to the air, "Zantian, if you don't come out again, your Heavenly Secrets Tower will become history." He believed that with Zantian's strength, Zantian must know what was happening here at this moment. The godly martial great emperor wanted to know if Zantian still cared about the Heavenly Secrets Tower. However, a quarter of an hour after the godly martial great emperor's voice fell, Zantian was not seen taking action. Seeing that Zantian did not come out, the godly martial great emperor said to the great emperors of the Heavenly Secrets world, "Blame your lord for abandoning you." As soon as he finished speaking, the godly martial great emperor once again mobilized the power of the Heavenly Devil. The huge palm print formed by the power of the Heavenly Devil directly struck the great emperors of the Heavenly Secrets Tower. The great emperors of the Heavenly Secrets Tower tried to resist, but found that their spiritual power was suppressed after coming into contact with the Heavenly Devil. They couldn't even use their spells. In this way, the entire Heavenly Secrets world was easily destroyed by the godly martial great emperor, and the Heavenly Secrets Tower completely disappeared from the central starfield. As for those great emperors of the Heavenly Secrets Tower who had already escaped, the godly martial great emperor also did not intend to let them go. He would cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Since they were all related to Zantian, then they should not live in this world. However, the godly martial great emperor did not immediately pursue and kill those great emperors. After eating so many great emperors of the Heavenly Secrets Tower, he suddenly felt a wave of drowsiness coming over him. Immediately, the godly martial great emperor returned to the Divine Moon Dynasty. The great emperors of the Divine Moon Dynasty were still waiting in the main hall. Some of them were thinking about going to see how the godly martial great emperor destroyed the heavenly secrets tower when they discovered that the godly martial great emperor's figure had already returned to the main hall. The godly martial great emperor glanced at the great emperors in the hall, and then said with a hint of drowsiness, "From today onwards, the Divine Moon Dynasty declares war on all the top forces in the universe. I don't need them to surrender to the Divine Moon Dynasty. I want all of them to become the nourishment of the Divine Moon Dynasty." Hearing this, the great emperors present became excited. Since they had transformed into heavenly devils, they had a kind of desire for cultivators, a desire that only arises when facing delicious food. The meaning of the godly martial great emperor's words was that they could eat people without restraint. The great heavenly devil emperors knelt down and said, "Your Majesty is wise." Originally, these great emperors were still a little worried that the godly martial great emperor retained the divine sense of humans, so they would have some resistance to eating people. Since the godly martial great emperor had said that he would not accept any surrender, then they could eat people however they wanted. The godly martial great emperor glanced at the great emperors present, and sensing their restless emotions, he immediately understood what these great emperors were thinking. However, he didn't care at all. He himself had already begun to eat cultivators, so it was impossible not to let his subordinates eat cultivators. Anyway, it didn't matter anymore. They had already become heavenly devils, and they were already standing on the opposite side of the cultivators. Next, the cultivators of the central starfield were likely to unite to deal with the Divine Moon Dynasty. In that case, they simply didn't need to be polite with those top forces. It was better to strike first. Taking advantage of the fact that the great emperors of those top forces had gone to the outer regions, they could just destroy the great formations of those top forces. When the great emperors of those top forces returned, they would lose their shelter, and then he could eat as many great emperors as he wanted. Thinking of this, the godly martial great emperor waved his hand, and his body turned into a wisp of black smoke and left the main hall. The great emperors present said in unison, "We respectfully send off your Majesty." After the godly martial great emperor left, the Divine Moon Dynasty immediately issued an announcement to the outside world that they would declare war on all the top forces in the central starfield. When they heard this news, some top forces couldn't believe it. They had personally seen the godly martial great emperor and the Lord of the Heavenly Secrets Tower go to the outer regions together. The godly martial great emperor was not there. How dare the Divine Moon Dynasty declare war on all the top forces in the central starfield? The key was that the announcement issued by the Divine Moon Dynasty was very arrogant. They were not only going to declare war on all the top forces in the central starfield, but they would also not accept any surrender, which meant that they were going to start a massacre and slaughter the entire central starfield. Just when people thought that this was just a false rumor, soon someone spread the news that the Heavenly Secrets Tower had been destroyed. Those great emperors of the Heavenly Secrets Tower who were fleeing also confirmed the news that the Heavenly Secrets Tower had been destroyed. Even the Heavenly Secrets Tower, the oldest force in the universe, had been destroyed. This immediately made the top forces in the central starfield raise their vigilance. They quickly sent out scouts to find out the news about the destruction of the Heavenly Secrets Tower and the Divine Moon Dynasty. Soon, the top forces were frightened by the information they had gathered and activated their great formations. The Divine Moon Dynasty had been completely shrouded in the power of the Heavenly Devil. The current Divine Moon Dynasty was a Heavenly Devil dynasty. There were no humans anymore, only Heavenly Devils. The great emperors of those top forces could not calm down to cultivate when they thought that the Devil's Cave was in the central starfield, right next to them. Now that the Heavenly Secrets Tower, a slightly neutral force, was gone to take the lead, it was difficult for those ancient Holy Lands to unite again. However, some great emperors of the Holy Lands still stood up and called on the top forces of the central starfield to unite to fight against the Heavenly Devils of the Divine Moon Dynasty. At this moment, outside the Pure Joy Holy Land, the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet stopped outside the Pure Joy Holy Land, but did not immediately launch an attack. As Lu Chen was considering whether to attack directly or let the fleet attack, a great emperor in charge of collecting information came to Lu Chen. "Your Majesty, there is information about the Divine Moon Dynasty." Hearing this, Lu Chen asked, "What are the movements of the Divine Moon Dynasty?" The Great Emperor took out a memory stone and handed it to Lu Chen. Lu Chen scanned it with his divine sense. After reading the contents of the memory stone, Lu Chen thought to himself, "It seems that the Heavenly Secrets Tower should have been destroyed by the godly martial Great Emperor. They brought it upon themselves. But then again, why hasn't Zantian appeared even after the Heavenly Secrets Tower was destroyed? Where did this Zantian go? He doesn't even want the Heavenly Secrets Tower that he created with his own hands." Emperor Taikong and the others came to Lu Chen. Thunder Emperor asked, "Your Majesty, are we attacking now?" Lu Chen thought for a while, then threw the memory stone to Thunder Emperor and the others. After Thunder Emperor and Emperor Taikong and the others scanned the contents of the memory stone with their divine sense, they were all stunned. End of this chapter. 1243 Attack on Qingyu Holy Land. No one had expected that the Celestial Mystery Pavilion, with its long history, would be destroyed in such a short time. What they didn't expect even more was that the Divine Moon Dynasty would be so arrogant, declaring war on the entire Central Star region. Lu Chen said, "The upcoming war is no longer a war between cultivators, but a war between cultivators and heavenly demons." Hearing this, the great emperors fell silent, not saying a word, originally thinking this day wouldn't come so soon. Celestial Mystery Maiden had said that the Great Tribulation was still about 10,000 years away, but unexpectedly, the heavenly demon chaos has erupted so quickly. With the heavenly demon chaos erupting so quickly, does that mean the epic tribulation might also be brought forward again? Maybe not even 10,000 years, perhaps even a few hundred years before the epic tribulation descends. But then again, even if the epic tribulation is brought forward, it wouldn't affect their attack on the Azure Clarity Sacred Ground, right? The crowd didn't understand why Lu Chen would say this. Lu Chen continued, "Since it is a war between cultivators and heavenly demons, then we cultivators should no longer be hostile to each other as before, but should unite." Hearing Lu Chen say this, the crowd immediately understood Lu Chen's meaning. Lu Chen was planning to unite the other forces in the Central Star region to jointly deal with the heavenly demon chaos. In this way, the Great Xia Dynasty could no longer casually attack other forces. If they continued to casually attack other forces, it would be difficult to gain the trust of other forces, and uniting would be impossible. Thinking of this, Emperor Taikong's hand clenched slightly. He really wanted to get rid of the Azure Clarity Master, but what Lu Chen said was not without reason. Now that the heavenly demon chaos is imminent, all the cultivators in the universe should unite. If he destroys the unity between cultivators for personal feelings, then he will eventually be a sinner of the entire universe. Emperor Taikong took a deep breath, then said to Lu Chen, "We will all listen to your Majesty." Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Lu Chen smiled faintly. He naturally saw that Emperor Taikong was a little unhappy. Then he directly transmitted his voice loudly to the Azure Clarity Sacred Ground. "Where is the Azure Clarity Master?" At this time, the Azure Clarity Master had already sensed the arrival of the Great Xia Dynasty's army, but he had been hiding in the Azure Clarity Sacred Ground, not coming out. After hearing Lu Chen's voice, the Azure Clarity Master separated a clone, flying to the outside of the Azure Clarity Sacred Grounds formation. Hearing this, the Azure Clarity Master sneered, "Even if the heavenly demon chaos has already begun, it is impossible for me to join the Great Xia Dynasty. If I guessed correctly, a heavenly emperor has already been born in this universe, and that heavenly emperor is not you, right?" Although the Azure Clarity Master had not seen Lu Chen, he had vaguely guessed the identity of Lu Chen beside Emperor Taikong. Now the one who can make Emperor Taikong stand respectfully on the side, and is not a Ninth Realm Great Emperor, is only the rumored reincarnated Heavenly Emperor. Lu Chen said, "That Heavenly Emperor is indeed not me. But what does this have to do with whether you join the Great Xia Dynasty or not?" The Azure Clarity Master said faintly, "Since you are not even the Heavenly Emperor, why should I listen to you and join the Great Xia Dynasty? Do you think that by bringing the army of the Great Xia Dynasty here, you can conquer the Azure Clarity Sacred Ground? Ridiculous. The foundation of the Sacred Ground is not something that a newly created dynasty can compare to." Seeing the Azure Clarity Master being so stubborn, Lu Chen sighed. after hearing the news that the Divine Moon Dynasty had declared war on all the forces in the Central Star region, he really didn't want to continue launching wars. After all, the next thing is the war between cultivators and heavenly demons. Infighting among cultivators will consume the strength of the major forces, making it difficult for them to deal with the heavenly demons. If the number of heavenly demons explodes again, maybe it will directly lead to the epic tribulation arriving early, as he guessed. He had thought in the past that the reason why the epic tribulation would arrive was not because the specific time had arrived, but because the number of heavenly demons had reached a certain level, which forced the universe to use the epic tribulation to do a major cleaning. Ever since Lu Chen knew that they were in the stomach of the chaos beast, Lu Chen was even more convinced of his guess. He felt that the heavenly demons were like cancer cells destroying the order of the universe, and those legendary red filaments were a mechanism in the chaos beast's body specifically used to kill cancer cells. Of course, all of this was Lu Chen's guess. After all, he retained the memories of Earth, so he would unconsciously bring in some knowledge about Earth when encountering something. Seeing that the Azure Clarity Master was unwilling to surrender, Lu Chen thought for a moment, since they were already here, and the Great Xia Dynasty had already destroyed many forces, it wouldn't hurt to destroy one more. Moreover, isn't Emperor Taikong the holy son of the Azure Clarity Sacred Ground? When the time comes, he will recommend Emperor Taikong as the holy master of the Azure Clarity Sacred Ground, and then let Emperor Taikong take the lead and cooperate with the Great Xia Dynasty. In this way, can't he establish the image of the Great Xia Dynasty as an ally in the hearts of other forces? Thinking of this, Lu Chen directly said to Emperor Thunder, "Attack." Hearing this, the Azure Clarity Master sneered, then his clone instantly turned into a light and returned to the Azure Clarity Sacred Grounds formation. The next moment, the entire Azure Clarity Sacred Grounds formation was activated, a huge ring appeared above the formation, a destructive force gathered in the ring. Seeing this scene, Emperor Taikong's face changed drastically in an instant, immediately reminding Lu Chen, "Your Majesty, be careful." As soon as Emperor Taikong finished speaking, the power in the ring turned into a giant sword and shot directly at Lu Chen. Emperor Taikong came in front of Lu Chen in one step, intending to resist this giant sword for Lu Chen. Lu Chen could feel that the destructive power contained in this giant sword was not something that ordinary people could take. Even if Emperor Taikong was a 9th realm great emperor, taking this attack would probably be seriously injured. Lu Chen did not hesitate to say to Emperor Thunder and the others, "Form the formation." As soon as Lu Chen's voice fell, the great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty immediately stood together and formed a spirit-gathering formation. The Azure Clarity Master in the Azure Clarity Sacred Ground showed a disdainful smile after seeing this scene. Relying on the spirit-gathering formation to resist his immortal extinguishing formation, a fool's dream. End of this chapter. 1244 The Trump Card of the Lord of Qingyu. Just as the giant sword containing the power of destruction was about to touch the spiritual power shield of Emperor Taikong, Lu Chen slightly exerted his strength and directly pushed Emperor Taikong aside. Emperor Taikong was stunned for a moment. He turned his head to look at Lu Chen, and the next moment his eyes widened suddenly. He discovered that Lu Chen was now emitting colorful power, and the pressure on his body instantly soared countless times. A pressure similar to that of the Heavenly Emperor was released from Lu Chen. At this time, the Master of Qingyu Holy Land was still waiting for his formation to kill Lu Chen, but suddenly felt a terrifying pressure descending. The Master of Qingyu Holy Land mobilized all the spiritual power in his body, trying to resist this pressure, but he was still unable to lift his body due to the pressure. The Master of Qingyu Holy Land said unwillingly, "Heavenly Emperor. This is the pressure of the Heavenly Emperor. How is this possible? How could Lu Chen be the Heavenly Emperor?" At this time, Lu Chen took out the Shattered God Sword and swung it out. Blood Soul Slash. The next moment, the sword energy wrapped in colorful power instantly slashed towards the giant sword that was shooting at him. When the giant sword came into contact with the sword energy of the Shattered God Sword, it instantly collapsed. At this time, the sword energy of the Shattered God Sword was still intact, and it directly slashed towards the great formation of Qingyu Holy Land. As soon as the sword energy of the Shattered God Sword collided with the defensive formation of Qingyu Holy Land, the defensive formation of Qingyu Holy Land instantly shattered and disintegrated like glass. Seeing that the defensive formation of the Holy Land was broken by Lu Chen so quickly, the master of Qingyu Holy Land panicked. He never expected that Lu Chen would possess the power of the Heavenly Emperor. However, the master of Qingyu Holy Land did not give up so quickly. After all, he was a survivor who had lived from the last era, and he still had many methods. The master of Qingyu Holy Land once again mobilized the ancient formation below Qingyu Holy Land. If the defensive formation was gone, they still had attacking formations. The next moment, a huge array pattern appeared below Qingyu Holy Land, and then the master of Qingyu Holy Land shouted, "Heaven and Earth Summoning Spirit Formation, activate!" As soon as the voice fell, more than a dozen great emperor souls emerged from the formation. Seeing these great emperor souls, the great emperors of Qingyu Holy Land were stunned. In the past, a great emperor would fall in Qingyu Holy Land every once in a while. They had actually guessed that the fall of these great emperors was related to the master of Qingyu Holy Land, but they did not know what the master of Qingyu Holy Land had done to those great emperors. Now seeing the souls of those great emperors, they finally knew what had happened to those great emperors. The master of Qingyu Holy Land had actually refined these great emperors into formations. Emperor Taikong said to himself, "I thought there was no way to control the great emperor in this world, but I didn't expect that there were so many ways to control the great emperor, it's just that we didn't know it." Not to mention Lu Chen's great emperor control method. Lu Chen was after all a reincarnated heavenly emperor, so it was normal for the heavenly emperor to have some methods to control the great emperor. But the master of Qingyu Holy Land was only a 9th level great emperor, but the master of Qingyu Holy Land also had a way to control the great emperor, but he refined these great emperors into a part of the formation. Compared to Lu Chen's control method, the master of Qingyu Holy Land's method of controlling the great emperor was even more cruel. The master of Qingyu Holy Land looked at Lu Chen outside Qingyu Holy Land and said, "Even if you were really the heavenly emperor, so what? This seat does not believe that you can withstand this seat's heaven and earth summoning spirit formation." While speaking, Lu Chen was preparing to take action to help these great emperors get rid of their suffering, but at this moment, the great emperor soul that had formed a new hole suddenly emitted a terrifying pressure. This pressure was even almost the same as the pressure emitted by Lu Chen at this time. Lu Chen was stunned for a moment, but he didn't care much. Although the strength of the two was almost the same, he was holding a fairy sword in his hand, and the monster in front of him was just an aggregate of souls. Lu Chen didn't hesitate any longer, and directly mobilized the colorful power gathered by the power of the Great Tao, and slashed out with a sword. "I will help you get rid of your suffering." The power of Lu Chen's sword was obviously more terrifying than the previous sword. Wherever the sword energy passed, cracks appeared in the space. The master of Qingyu Holy Land snorted coldly and roared at the monster aggregated by the great emperor's soul, "Tear him apart for this seat." As soon as the master of Qingyu Holy Land finished speaking, the monster directly rushed towards the sword energy, which Lu Chen did not expect. It stands to reason that the power of this sword energy was enough to kill the monster, so why did the master of Qingyu Holy Land want him to take the initiative to meet it? Shouldn't he be avoiding it? The pressure on this monster was almost the same as his. The pressure on his body now could not limit the monster's actions, and it was not impossible for it to avoid the blood soul slash. Just as Lu Chen was puzzled by the actions of the master of Qingyu Holy Land, the corners of the master of Qingyu Holy Land's mouth rose slightly. Suddenly, another huge monster appeared in the heaven and earth summoning spirit formation. This monster was the same as the monster aggregated by the souls of those great emperors, with human heads growing on various parts of its body, looking very terrifying. Emperor Taikong and others could tell at a glance that those heads were the flesh bodies of the previous great emperor souls. Obviously, this monster was aggregated by the flesh bodies of those great emperors. The master of Qingyu Holy Land could not only control the souls of the great emperors, but also control the flesh bodies of the great emperors. Just as the great emperors of Qingyu Holy Land were filled with anger, the monster formed by the flesh bodies of the great emperors went straight to Lu Chen's back from another direction. Obviously, his target was the spirit gathering formation behind Lu Chen. Emperor Taikang quickly reminded, "Your Majesty, be careful, its target is the Spirit Gathering Formation." Lu Chen didn't take it to heart. When he was in the outer realm, he had experienced others attacking the Spirit Gathering Formation. He also knew the importance of the Spirit Gathering Formation, so he had already separated his source power to protect the great emperors in the Spirit Gathering Formation from the beginning. At this time, the monster had arrived in front of a great emperor who was building the Spirit Gathering Formation. Because of the Spirit Gathering Formation, the great emperor's whole body was unable to move at this time, and he could only watch the monster smash down with a punch. Just when the great emperor of the Great Xia Dynasty thought that he was bound to die, he found that the monster's fist did not fall on him. He looked up and found that a gray shield appeared above his body. After the monster's fist fell on the gray shield, it was difficult to go any further. At this time, the sword energy that Lu Chen swung out had touched the monster aggregated by the great emperor's soul, and the monster turned into dust the moment it touched the sword energy. 1245 The strange thread beneath the Qingyu Holy Land. Seeing that the first layer of the array had been broken, the Lord of Qingyu did not show a panicked expression. On the contrary, he was very excited. Because the monster formed from the great emperor's flesh had already landed behind Lu Chen, destroying the spirit gathering array behind Lu Chen. As long as the spirit gathering array could be destroyed, Lu Chen's heavenly emperor power would cease to exist. The Lord of Qingyu once again urged the power of the heaven and earth spirit summoning array, causing the monster formed from the great emperor's flesh to frantically attack the great emperors who formed the spirit gathering array. However, the Lord of Qingyu quickly discovered that even if the great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty stood still, he could not harm them even with all the power of the heaven and earth spirit summoning array. Seeing this scene, a trace of fear finally appeared on the Lord of Qingyu's face. How is this possible? It wasn't like he didn't know about the spirit gathering array. Logically speaking, when the great emperors used the spirit gathering array, all their power would converge towards the array's core. At this time, apart from their own protective magic weapons, they had no way to actively use their power to defend themselves, and it was their most vulnerable moment. But why couldn't he harm those great emperors even after using all the power of the heaven and earth spirit summoning array? What power constituted the gray defensive barrier on the surface of those great emperors? How could it be unbreakable? Lu Chen didn't plan to waste any more time with the Lord of Qingyu. He directly used a space teleportation, and the next moment his body disappeared from the spot, reappearing behind the Lord of Qingyu. Sensing the terrifying aura behind him, the Lord of Qingyu instantly came back to his senses. Not good. The Lord of Qingyu hurriedly thought about dodging, but at this time, Lu Chen had already swung his sword. The Lord of Qingyu subconsciously wanted to use space teleportation to escape, but found that this space had already been locked, and space teleportation could not be used at all. Just like that, the Lord of Qingyu instantly became a dead soul under Lu Chen's sword. As the Lord of Qingyu's soul dissipated between heaven and earth, the heaven and earth spirit summoning array also completely disintegrated because it lost its manipulator. The flesh bodies of those great emperors also instantly disintegrated, falling on the land of the Qingyu Holy Land. Looking at those emperor corpses, Emperor Taikang couldn't help but sigh, and then he said to the other great emperors of the Qingyu Holy Land, "Bury them all properly." After saying that, Emperor Taikang came to Lu Chen and bowed respectfully, saying, "Thank you, Your Majesty, for removing the greatest scourge of the Qingyu Holy Land for us." Lu Chen didn't answer immediately. He used his divine sense to explore the entire Qingyu Holy Land, and found that there were still many ancient arrays beneath the Qingyu Holy Land. Then, he released his seven-colored power and destroyed all these ancient arrays. However, just after those arrays collapsed, the entire Qingyu Holy Land began to shake, looking like it was about to disintegrate. Seeing this scene, Lu Chen was stunned for a moment, thinking in his heart that the Qingyu Holy Land wouldn't just disintegrate like this, would it? He was still planning to build a saint-level teleportation array here. Lu Chen quickly took action, trying to stabilize the Qingyu Holy Land with the power of origin, but this didn't work. Lu Chen smiled and said to Emperor Taikang and the others, "It seems that your Qingyu Holy Land is completely destroyed this time." After saying that, Lu Chen immediately flew into the void. Emperor Taikong looked at the Qingyu Holy Land that was disintegrating, and seemed a little helpless. He also saw that Lu Chen was not intentional. Obviously, when the Lord of Qingyu created the Qingyu Holy Land, he had completely tied the Qingyu Holy Land to his life. Once the Lord of Qingyu died, the Qingyu Holy Land would naturally disintegrate. After glancing at the Qingyu Holy Land disciples who were struggling to escape, Emperor Taikong took the initiative to attack. A majestic great emperor power instantly swept across the entire Qingyu Holy Land. The next moment, all the disciples in the Qingyu Holy Land were wrapped in a golden yellow barrier. At this time, the people of the Qingyu Holy Land already knew what was happening. They all knelt down towards Lu Chen in the void and said, "Greetings, Heavenly Emperor." Lu Chen said faintly to Emperor Taikong, "These people will be left to you to deal with. You can choose a star field in the Great Xia Dynasty." Emperor Taikong quickly thanked him and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Lu Chen was about to say something when Emperor Thunder suddenly transmitted his voice, "Your Majesty, look quickly, there seems to be something below the Qingyu Holy Land." Hearing Emperor Thunder's voice transmission, Lu Chen's gaze immediately turned to the Qingyu Holy Land again. When a part of the Qingyu Holy Land collapsed, some red threads were exposed below the Qingyu Holy Land. These threads were quietly coiled together, looking very strange. Seeing these threads, Lu Chen thought of the red threads mentioned in the records of the ancient era. He quickly transmitted his voice to everyone, "Everyone, do not act rashly." Hearing Lu Chen's voice transmission, the great emperors present instantly realized the seriousness of the matter. Most of the great emperors had read some ancient era records about the era cataclysm, and they had also heard of the strange red threads in the era cataclysm. Now, the bottom of the Qingyu Holy Land was surrounded by circles of these red threads, and these threads exuded an aura that made their bodies feel fear. It was very likely that these red threads were the culprits of the era cataclysm mentioned in the records of the ancient era. For a time, everyone present was frightened and their faces turned pale, and cold sweat broke out. If this was really the culprit of the era cataclysm, once these red threads were activated, probably none of the people present would be able to survive. They were just a little puzzled as to why these strange red threads would appear below the Qingyu Holy Land. For a time, the void where the Qingyu Holy Land was located was completely silent, without any movement. The great emperors were floating in the void, ready to escape at any time. Lu Chen carefully observed these red threads. These red threads were coiled together in circles, like the hair of some kind of creature, but although they exuded a terrifying aura, they were not moving. It should be that the time has not yet come, and these red threads have not been activated. Only when a certain time comes, such as when the number of heavenly demons exceeds a certain level, will these red threads be completely activated. Thinking of this possibility, Lu Chen transmitted his voice to the great emperors present, "Everyone, slowly withdraw from the central starfield." The central starfield has these red threads. Once the era cataclysm begins, the central starfield will definitely be the most unsafe place. At first, they thought that there was some era transition place in the central starfield, and the central starfield was the safest. Now it seems that the experience of the previous era is no longer applicable to this era. End of this chapter. 1246. Then I have to use coercive means. As Lu Chen's voice faded, the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet began to slowly and deliberately leave the starfield, moving with extreme caution, afraid of disturbing the strange red threads. Fortunately, the eerie red filaments remained undisturbed until the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet had completely left the starfield. Soon, the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet arrived at the periphery of the Red Rain world. Sensing the approach of numerous great emperor auras near the Red Rain world, Yun Qingshu immediately deduced that it must be the return of the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet. Without even opening her eyes, she continued to meditate and cultivate, seemingly oblivious to the situation, even as the Great Xia Dynasty's star destroyers entered the Red Rain world. Yun Qingshu remained unmoved. She knew that she was no match for Lu Chen in her current state, and even if she voiced her objections, it would be futile. So, she simply chose to ignore him. However, Yun Qingshu's indifference didn't mean Lu Chen would leave her alone. Especially after learning about the bizarre red threads in the central starfield, Lu Chen couldn't allow Yan Qingshu to remain there any longer. The central starfield was now far more dangerous than any other place in the universe. Just as Yan Qingshu was about to block her senses and focus on cultivation, a familiar presence suddenly appeared in her room. Yan Qingshu knew that the man who wanted to sleep with her had arrived. Without hesitation, she immediately erected a barrier around herself, signaling her unwillingness to see him. But Lu Chen didn't leave. He used his source power to easily break through the soundproof barrier Yan Qingshu had set up. Yan Qingshu's eyes remained closed, her delicate eyebrows slightly furrowed. Lu Chen spoke, "I have something important to discuss with you." Hearing this, Yan Qingshu felt a surge of disdain. What important matter could Lu Chen possibly have for her? He was only here because he wanted her to go to the Great Xia Dynasty. Seeing that Yan Qingshu didn't speak or open her eyes, Lu Chen simply said, "You experienced the epic calamity of the previous era, so you should be very familiar with this." With that, Lu Chen extracted a portion of his memories and projected them directly into the room. The projection displayed the scene of the red threads. When Yan Qingshu's divine sense detected the projection in the room, she abruptly opened her eyes. Seeing the strange threads in the projection, Yan Qingshu's pupils constricted slightly, and an expression of disbelief appeared on her serene face. Having experienced an epic calamity, she was all too familiar with these bizarre red threads. Although the red filaments in the projection were quietly coiled together, without any movement, Yan Qingshu immediately recognized them as the same eerie threads that had slaughtered all living beings during the previous epic calamity. If these strange red threads had appeared, did that mean the epic calamity had already begun? Coming back to her senses, Yan Qingshu looked at Lu Chen and asked, "Where did you find this?" If the epic calamity had truly begun, the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet couldn't possibly be unharmed. Yan Qingshu clearly sensed that the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet hadn't suffered any losses, which proved that Lu Chen and his people hadn't been affected by the epic calamity. Lu Chen replied, "Beneath the Pure Joy Holy Land." After the collapse of the Pure Joy Holy Land, these red threads appeared, but they haven't moved at all, as if the time hasn't come yet. Hearing Lu Chen's answer, Yan Qingshu was stunned again. Beneath the Pure Joy Holy Land, which meant the central starfield. In this era, these red threads first appeared in the central starfield. Without the experience of her previous life, how could they survive the epic calamity? Yan Qingshu fell into deep thought. Seeing that Yan Qingshu wasn't speaking, Lu Chen said, "Now that the central starfield is no longer safe, can you come with me to the Great Xia Dynasty?" Hearing this, Yan Qingshu was taken aback. She truly had nowhere else to go now. But then again, if even the central starfield, the place where the epic transition zone was most likely to appear, wasn't safe, then where in the universe was safe? Was the Great Xia Dynasty safe? The Heavenly Emperor had already been born, and that Heavenly Emperor was clearly not Lu Chen. Lu Chen could no longer become the Heavenly Emperor. Even Lu Chen as the Heavenly Emperor wouldn't have been able to protect others through the epic calamity, let alone Lu Chen who wasn't the Heavenly Emperor. Seeing that Yan Qingshu remained silent, Lu Chen then said forcefully, "I wouldn't say anything if you didn't want to go to the Great Xia Dynasty before, because the central starfield might have an epic transition zone. But now the central starfield not only has Heavenly Emperor level heavenly devils, but even these strange threads that only appear during the Great Calamity have emerged. I can't possibly let you stay in the central starfield." Hearing this, Yan Qingshu's delicate eyebrows furrowed. She looked into Lu Chen's eyes and asked coldly, "If I'm unwilling to go with you to the Great Xia Dynasty, what will you do?" Lu Chen said with a smile, "Then I'll just have to use coercive measures." Hearing Lu Chen's answer, the cold aura emanating from Yan Qingshu couldn't be suppressed. If she really went to the Great Xia Dynasty, she would only have one ending, to become a member of Lu Chen's harem. Although Yan Qingshu wasn't that concerned about matters between men and women, after all, she had lived for who knows how many years, and she no longer had the moral compass of a young girl in her heart. But even if she didn't have a moral compass, she still had the dignity of a great emperor. Going to the Great Xia Dynasty to be Lu Chen's woman, serving Lu Chen alone with so many women, having to use all sorts of methods to please Lu Chen, and finally becoming a tool for Lu Chen's indulgence, she definitely couldn't accept that. Seeing the cold aura released from Yuan Qingshu, Lu Chen knew that Yuan Qingshu really didn't plan to go to the Great Xia Dynasty with him. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Lu Chen then transmitted his voice to the Thunder Emperor and the others. Don't rush back yet, immediately use the spirit gathering formation. Hearing Lu Chen's voice transmission, the Thunder Emperor and the others who were preparing to use the Saint-level teleportation formation to return to the Great Xia Dynasty were all dumbfounded. There were no enemies here. What was the point of using the spirit gathering formation? Although they didn't know what Lu Chen wanted to do, the great emperors quickly gathered together. In the next moment, all the power of the Great Tao converged on Lu Chen, and the pressure on Lu Chen instantly reached the Heavenly Emperor realm. Feeling the pressure released from Lu Chen, Yuan Qingshu was momentarily dazed. Lu Chen then said, "Since we can't communicate with emotion, then I'll just have to talk about the laws of the cultivation world. 1247 I intend to send troops to the Shenyu dynasty." Lu Chen gazed into Yuan Qingshu's eyes and continued, "Cultivators value the law of the jungle, where the strong are respected. Now I am stronger than you. If you are unwilling to come with me, then I will have no choice but to take action against you." Yuan Qingshu regained her senses, her face still as cold as ice. "If you want to kill me, then do it." Although Yuan Qingshu still had some desire to live, she found death not so frightening compared to the humiliation she might suffer. Moreover, the central star region was now plagued by those strange red filaments. The methods used in the previous epoch to avoid the great calamity were no longer effective. The probability of her falling in this epoch was very high. Sooner or later, she would die anyway. If Lu Chen wanted to kill her, then let him. Yuan Qingshu remained silent, seemingly determined not to go with Lu Chen. Lu Chen said, "The reason you are unwilling to come with me to the Great Xia Dynasty is ultimately because you fear I will treat you like I treated Shenxian. You can rest assured on this point. I will not lay a hand on you. You and Shenxian look exactly alike. Dual cultivation with you is no different from dual cultivation with her. The main reason I want to bring you to the Great Xia Dynasty is because I am worried that something happening to you, the main body, will affect Shenxian, the secondary body. Although you appear to have severed your karmic ties, this is only superficial. The destruction of the main body will, to some extent, affect the secondary body." Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yuan Qingshu frowned slightly, thinking to herself that what Lu Chen said was not without reason. While Yuan Qingshu was distracted, Lu Chen continued, "For Shenxian's sake, even if you are unwilling to come with me to the Great Xia Dynasty, I will forcibly take you there." Yuan Qingshu coldly asked, "Are you really doing this for her?" Lu Chen said, "Of course. I already have enough women. Having one more or one less doesn't really matter to me. You don't think I want to bring you to the Great Xia Dynasty because I like you, do you?" Hearing Lu Chen's words, Yuan Qingshu felt that there was some truth to them. Lu Chen had so many women already, having one more or one less really wouldn't make a difference. Moreover, Lu Chen already had a secondary body by his side who looked exactly like her. Sleeping with anyone was the same for Lu Chen, and it wouldn't make any difference. Perhaps Lu Chen was really doing it for Yuan Shenxian. Thinking of this possibility, Yuan Qingshu's attitude finally softened. "All right, I will go with you to the Great Xia Dynasty." Her strength was now inferior to Lu Chen's. Even if she didn't agree, she might be forcibly taken to the Great Xia Dynasty by Lu Chen. In the face of Lu Chen's Heavenly Emperor-level strength, it would be difficult for her to even self-detonate her divine soul. Since Lu Chen had said that bringing her to the Great Xia Dynasty was only for Yuan Shenxian's sake and not to do those kinds of things with her, then she would make the trip. Nowhere in the universe was safe anyway. Perhaps the barrier in the Great Xia Dynasty could withstand some threats. Seeing Yuan Qingshu agree, the corners of Lu Chen's mouth slightly curved upwards. He then said, "Then let's go." Yuan Qingshu immediately got up and directly transmitted a message to everyone in the profound Moon Palace, telling them to pack their things and follow the Great Xia Dynasty's immortal ship to the Great Xia Dynasty. Hearing Yuan Qingshu's decision, the people of the profound Moon Palace were stunned. They had only been in the Central Star region for a few years. Why were they moving again now? And they were moving to the Great Xia Dynasty. Although some people had doubts in their hearts, the overall strength of the people in the profound Moon Palace was relatively low, and they didn't dare to say much. They could only obediently do as they were told. Thus, Yuan Qingshu took everyone from the profound Moon Palace and moved to the Great Xia Dynasty with Lu Chen and the others. Lu Chen specially allocated a star region to the profound Moon Palace. After Yuan Qingshu arrived at the Great Xia Dynasty, Lu Chen stopped paying attention to Yuan Qingshu. He knew that Yuan Qingshu still harbored resentment towards him. He wasn't in a hurry anyway, and he had plenty of women now. Although the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet had left the Central Star region, Lu Chen did not give up monitoring the Central Star region. The Red Rain world was still under the control of the Great Xia Dynasty. Lu Chen left several great emperors in the Red Rain world, and he also left an avatar in the Red Rain world. In this way, he could know what was happening in the Central Star region as soon as it happened. Time passed day by day, and the Great Xia Dynasty's expansion continued. At the same time, the Divine Moon Dynasty's expansion in the Central Star region also began. In order to deal with the Divine Moon Dynasty, the top forces in the Central Star region almost all united and formed an organization called the Immortal Alliance. Lu Chen also knew the dangers of the heavenly demons, but he did not launch an attack on the Divine Moon Dynasty immediately. His main focus was still on Zantian, who was nowhere to be found. However, another 10 years passed in the blink of an eye, and Zantian still did not appear. The situation in the Central Star region became increasingly worse, and the number of heavenly demons also increased. Lu Chen felt that if this continued, the great calamity of the universe would really come. So, he convened a Heavenly Emperor Conference, intending to send troops to the Divine Moon Dynasty. Heavenly Emperor Hall. Lu Chen glanced at the great emperors in the hall. After these years of expansion, the Great Xia Dynasty now had more than 1,000 heavenly emperors. Many of these great emperors had surrendered from other dynasties, but more of them were able to break through because of the Great Xia Dynasty's thick fortune. Seeing Lu Chen appear, the great emperors in the Heavenly Emperor Hall saluted in unison. "Greetings, Heavenly Emperor." Lu Chen said indifferently, "You may rise." Basically, everyone had guessed why Lu Chen had convened this emperor-level meeting. After all, the Great Xia Dynasty had a saint-level teleportation array in the Red Rain world, and intelligence from the Central Star region was transmitted back to the Great Xia Dynasty every day through that saint-level teleportation array. At this time, Lu Chen opened his mouth and said, "The situation of the Immortal Alliance allied forces is not optimistic. Many of the top holy lands in the Central Star region have been destroyed." Hearing Lu Chen say this, people thought to themselves that their heavenly emperor was indeed planning to send troops to the Divine Moon Dynasty. Their chance to make contributions had finally come. All the great emperors present had cultivated the devil burial art, and their power had an absolute suppressing effect on the heavenly demons. During this period, many heavenly demons wandering outside the universe had been killed by the great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty. Many great emperors had long wanted to go to the Central Star region and meet those heavenly demons. Lu Chen glanced at the somewhat restless crowd and then continued, "It seems that you have all guessed what this emperor-level meeting is for." "That's right, I intend to send troops to the Divine Moon Dynasty to eliminate this demonic lair." As soon as Lu Chen finished speaking, the great emperors in the hall said in unison, "We fully support Your Majesty the Heavenly Emperor." Lu Chen continued, "I know that you feel that you have cultivated the devil burial art and have a suppressing effect on the heavenly demons, but you must know that the heavenly demons of the Divine Moon Dynasty are different from the heavenly demons in other parts of the universe." End of this chapter. 1248 Listen to my advice and return to your Great Xia Dynasty. Hearing Lu Chen's reminder, the agitated hearts of the great emperors calmed down slightly. Their heavenly emperor was right, the sky demons of the Divine Moon Dynasty were very strong, with many great emperor-level sky demons, and the number of great emperor-level sky demons was probably no less than that of the Great Xia Dynasty. Of course, the strength of the sky demons was one aspect, and another aspect was that the sky demons of the Divine Moon Dynasty were different from those sky demons they had encountered before who only knew how to eat people. Most of the sky demons of the Divine Moon Dynasty were transformed from cultivators, and they were more intelligent than ordinary sky demons, knowing how to use human tactics. So even if their power had a suppressive effect on the sky demons, those sky demons would definitely think of other ways to reduce this power's suppressive effect, such as setting up traps and formations. If the great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty only regarded those sky demons as the sky demons in the universe who only knew how to eat people, then they might suffer a loss. Seeing that the great emperors in the hall had calmed down a little, Lu Chen continued, "Of course, you don't need to worry too much." At this time, a great emperor asked, "Your Majesty, are we sending out the entire army this time?" The Divine Moon Dynasty had now occupied almost half of the Central Star region, so they felt that if the Great Xia Dynasty wanted to destroy the Divine Moon Dynasty this time, it would probably have to go all out. Lu Chen said, "Not for the time being. I plan to send only 500 great emperors and 2,000 starships." To be honest, Lu Chen was still a little worried that Zantian would suddenly run out at this time. The remaining 500 great emperors, using the spirit gathering formation, could allow him to instantly possess the strength of a heavenly emperor. Leaving 500 great emperors behind, even if Zantian came, he would have the power to fight. If all the great emperors were sent out, it would be troublesome if Zantian took the opportunity to attack the Great Xia Dynasty. It was strange, but 10 years had passed, and that Zantian had not come to find trouble with him. Logically speaking, Zantian must know that he was constantly expanding, and the Great Xia Dynasty's fortune was getting stronger and stronger. The stronger the Great Xia Dynasty's fortune, the more great emperors there were, and the stronger he would be. It would not be so easy for Zantian to kill him then. Lu Chen's approach had some suspicion of nurturing a bandit to gain self-respect, but this approach was indeed very useful. Now the Great Xia Dynasty had enough great emperors and had become the #1 power in the universe. Even without the Divine Moon Dynasty, as long as the Great Xia Dynasty sent troops, those top forces would not be able to compete with the Great Xia Dynasty. Even the current Immortal Alliance army would stay far away when they encountered the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet. The Divine Moon Dynasty was no longer useful to the Great Xia Dynasty, and it was time to clean it up. After telling the great emperors about the dispatch of troops, Lu Chen then began to arrange for those great emperors to go on the expedition with him, and those great emperors to stay behind to guard the Great Xia Dynasty. After the candidates were determined, the Great Xia Dynasty spent half a year completing the assembly of the army. The fleet arrived directly at the Central Star region through the Saint-level teleportation array of the Red Rain world. As soon as the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet arrived in the Central Star region, they discovered that the Immortal Alliance army's immortal ships were retreating towards the direction of the Red Rain world. The Immortal Alliance army's immortal ships were all tattered, and the retreating great emperors were also carrying various injuries. Seeing the more than 2,000 starships that suddenly appeared, the great emperors of the Immortal Alliance army were stunned. Had they just left the tiger's den and entered the wolf's mouth? Seeing the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet, the 9th-level Great Emperor leading this Immortal Alliance army immediately ordered all the immortal ships and Great Emperors to stop and no longer retreat. They stayed in the void, quietly observing the Great Xia Dynasty's starships. At this time, a Great Emperor said in front of the leading Great Emperor of this coalition army, "This should be the Great Xia Dynasty's immortal ship, right? I have seen the Great Xia Dynasty's immortal ship, and it looks like this." Hearing this, the Cloud Whale Great Emperor breathed a sigh of relief. If it was the Great Xia Dynasty's immortal ship, then they still had a chance to escape. If it was the Divine Moon Dynasty's immortal ship, then they would probably have nowhere to escape. The Cloud Whale Great Emperor directly transmitted his voice across several light years and asked, "Are you going to the Central Star region to support the Immortal Alliance army?" Now almost half of the entire Central Star region has been occupied by the Divine Moon Dynasty. At this time, the Great Xia Dynasty's immortal ship appeared in the Central Star region, then it was likely going to the Divine Moon Dynasty, which was great news for the Immortal Alliance army. Lu Chen released his divine sense to investigate the situation of the Immortal Alliance army. Seeing that the great emperors who had escaped were all seriously injured, Lu Chen felt a little emotional. To deal with the sky demons, they still had to rely on these professionals. Lu Chen then transmitted his voice and said, "I am the master of the Great Xia Dynasty. Who is the leader of your coalition army? Come and see me quickly." If it were in the past, the Cloud Whale Great Emperor would definitely be very angry when he heard these words. He was also the master of a dynasty, and he also had dignity. You said let me come to see you and I will come to see you. But now, the Cloud Whale Great Emperor had been beaten by the Sky Demon army and had no temper at all. After hearing Lu Chen's voice transmission, he did not even hesitate at all. He directly took a step, and the next moment he appeared in front of Lu Chen. After arriving in front of Lu Chen, he found that Lu Chen was only at the 8th level of the Great Emperor. The Cloud Whale Great Emperor was slightly stunned, and then he tentatively asked, "Are you the rumored reincarnated Heavenly Emperor Lu Chen?" The Cloud Whale Great Emperor thought that Lu Chen should already be at the 9th level no matter what, but he didn't expect that he was only at the 8th level now. In order to fight against the Sky Demon army, the 9th level Great Emperors of the Immortal Alliance army didn't know how many had died. What kind of role could an 8th level Great Emperor play? The Cloud Whale Great Emperor came back to his senses and continued, "Listen to my advice, hurry back to your Great Xia Dynasty. This is not something you can interfere with. The Immortal Alliance army has completely collapsed, and no one can stop the Sky Demon army. You are only sending food to those Sky Demons. 1249 Subdue the remaining troops of the Immortal Alliance." After hearing the words of the Cloud Whale Great Emperor, Lu Chen said with a faint smile, "How would I know if I haven't tried?" The Cloud Whale Great Emperor sneered and didn't try to persuade Lu Chen any further. It was hard to dissuade a ghost eager to die. If Lu Chen insisted on seeking death, then he couldn't be blamed. Just as the Cloud Whale Great Emperor was about to leave, Lu Chen suddenly raised his hand, and a stream of pure life force poured into the Cloud Whale Great Emperor's body. In a short while, all the injuries on the Cloud Whale Great Emperor's body disappeared, and his entire being returned to its previous state. The Cloud Whale Great Emperor was stunned for a moment. He looked at Lu Chen in disbelief. In his memory, wasn't Lu Chen the Slaughter Great Emperor who controlled the power of slaughter? How could he also use the power of life? Moreover, his life force seemed to be purer and more effective than that of other life Great Emperors. There were also life Great Emperors in the Immortal Alliance army, and he had been treated by life Great Emperors before, so he could feel the difference between Lu Chen's life force and that of other life Great Emperors. However, the Cloud Whale Great Emperor quickly reacted, and he looked at Lu Chen warily and asked, "What do you mean by this?" Writing this, I hope readers remember our domain Taiwan Novel Network. The Cloud Whale Great Emperor didn't believe that Lu Chen would heal him for no reason. There was no free lunch in the world. Lu Chen said, "Now that the Immortal Alliance army has been defeated, the entire Central Star region will soon fall. I'm afraid you will have nowhere to go next. Why not join the Great Xia Dynasty?" Just as the Cloud Whale Great Emperor was about to refuse, Lu Chen suddenly said, "The current Great Xia Dynasty is the #1 power in the universe. The number of great emperors has exceeded 1,000, and the thickness of its fortune is beyond your imagination. The most important point is that you should also know how strong the barrier of the Great Xia Dynasty is. Joining the Great Xia Dynasty may give you a chance to escape the Great Calamity." Hearing Lu Chen's words, the Cloud Whale Great Emperor fell silent. He thought about it and felt that Lu Chen's words seemed to make sense. Now they really had nowhere to go. Once the Central Star region was completely lost, the Celestial Devil army of the Divine Moon Dynasty would definitely expand to other parts of the universe. By then, the entire universe would be occupied by the Celestial Devil army. Of course, the harm of the Celestial Devils was secondary. The most important point was that according to the records of the ancient era, once the Celestial Devils appeared on a large scale, the real era calamity would begin soon. Now, the number of Celestial Devils was unknown, and the era calamity was probably not far away. Now that the Central Star region was about to be occupied by the Celestial Devils, the land of era transition that they had been thinking about was gone. They could only think of other ways to escape the era calamity, but as of now, they had no way to escape the era calamity. If Lu Chen was really the reincarnation of the Celestial Emperor, then perhaps Lu Chen had a way to escape the era calamity. Thinking of this, the Cloud Whale Great Emperor said, "Okay, we will join the Great Xia Dynasty, but we will not follow you to seek death." They had just retreated from the front line, and they were definitely unwilling to fight against the Celestial Devil Army at this time. Lu Chen chuckled and then said, "You don't need to take action. You just need to follow behind the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet and watch." Hearing this, a trace of suspicion appeared on the Cloud Whale Great Emperor's face. "Just watch." The Cloud Whale Great Emperor thought about it and finally agreed, "Okay, then we will follow behind you, but I'll say the ugly things first, we will never take action again." Lu Chen ignored the Cloud Whale Great Emperor and directly said to the Thunder Great Emperor, "Continue to advance." As soon as he finished speaking, the army of the Great Xia Dynasty directly headed towards the Divine Moon Dynasty. The Cloud Whale Great Emperor immediately returned to the Immortal Alliance army he led. Seeing the Cloud Whale Great Emperor return, the Great Emperors of the Immortal Alliance army quickly surrounded him. "Cloud Whale Great Emperor, what did that person from the Great Xia Dynasty say?" The Cloud Whale Great Emperor said lightly, "This emperor has chosen to join the Great Xia Dynasty. Anyone who doesn't want to join the Great Xia Dynasty can leave now." The Immortal Alliance army was originally formed by various forces. In this Immortal Alliance army led by the Cloud Whale Great Emperor, there were great emperors from more than a dozen forces. He couldn't force them to join the Great Xia Dynasty. This kind of thing was entirely voluntary. Hearing the words of the Cloud Whale Great Emperor, the great emperors present were stunned. The Cloud Whale Great Emperor actually chose to join the Great Xia Dynasty. At this moment, a great emperor sighed and said, "Now, besides joining the Great Xia Dynasty, there seems to be nowhere else to go. The Immortal Alliance army has been completely defeated. It won't be long before the Celestial Devil army occupies the entire Central Star region and expands outwards. By then, we can only hide everywhere." As soon as this great emperor finished speaking, the great emperors present fell silent. They also knew their current situation. It's just that letting them join the Great Xia Dynasty, they still had some resistance in their hearts. At this time, a great emperor asked curiously, "Why are the immortal ships of the Great Xia Dynasty still going to the core area of the Central Star region?" The Cloud Whale Great Emperor replied, "The Great Xia Dynasty plans to fight the Celestial Devil army to the death." So many great emperors of their Immortal Alliance army had been defeated, and the Great Xia Dynasty actually dared to fight the Celestial Devil army head-on. At this time, a great emperor said worriedly, "The Great Xia Dynasty doesn't want us to pave the way for them in front, does it?" The Cloud Whale Great Emperor said, "That person from the Great Xia Dynasty said, 'Let us just watch from behind, we don't need to participate in this battle.'" Everyone was dubious. Was there such a good thing? Joining the Great Xia Dynasty without having to fight, was the Great Xia Dynasty so kind? A great emperor said, "Could there be some conspiracy in this?" At this time, a great emperor with injuries all over his body stood up and said, "Regardless of any conspiracy, as long as the Great Xia Dynasty is willing to resist the Celestial Devil army, this emperor is willing to join the Great Xia Dynasty." The force to which this great emperor belonged had been destroyed by the Celestial Devil army, and he himself had been severely injured by the Celestial Devils. He now hated those Celestial Devils to the core. Not only this great emperor, but many people present hated the Celestial Devils to the core. As the great emperor's voice fell, more and more great emperors chose to directly join the Great Xia Dynasty. Some great emperors even wanted to counterattack with the army of the Great Xia Dynasty. Among these people, there were also those who hesitated, but when they saw that other great emperors had chosen to join the Great Xia Dynasty, they also planned to stay and see what happened first. If the strength of the Great Xia Dynasty was very strong and could fight the Celestial Devil army, they could also consider joining the Great Xia Dynasty at that time. If the army of the Great Xia Dynasty collapsed when they encountered the Celestial Devil army, then it would not be too late for them to leave. Anyway, they would just hide behind the army of the Great Xia Dynasty and see what happened. End of this chapter. 1250 The decisive battle between the Great Xia Dynasty and the Shenyu Dynasty. The Great Xia Dynasty's fleet advanced very quickly, heading directly towards the Divine Moon Dynasty. Seeing this, the remnants of the Immortal Alliance led by Emperor Yun Wei felt that Lu Chen was not taking the Divine Martial Emperor seriously enough. When they formed the Immortal Alliance army, they were only passively defending and didn't dare to directly attack the Divine Moon Dynasty. After all, they were already struggling to deal with ordinary Emperor-level celestial demons. If they provoked the Divine Martial Emperor, who was suspected to be a Celestial Emperor-level celestial demon, they would probably collapse even faster. So far, the Divine Martial Emperor had only appeared once when he destroyed the Heavenly Mystery Tower, and hadn't taken action since. If the Divine Martial Emperor were to act, the Central Star region would have already been occupied by the Divine Moon Dynasty. For a time, the emperors of the Immortal Alliance remnants felt very worried. Although they were following behind the Great Xia Dynasty, they could escape immediately if something went wrong, but no one knew how terrifying the Divine Martial Emperor's current strength was. They were worried that they wouldn't even have a chance to escape. Lu Chen didn't care what Emperor Yun Wei and the others thought. The Great Xia Dynasty's army still headed straight for the Divine Moon Dynasty. Even if the Divine Martial Emperor was a celestial emperor, Lu Chen didn't consider him to be too great of a threat. At the same time, Divine Moon Dynasty, Divine Martial Hall. The Divine Martial Emperor sat on the magnificent dragon throne, watching the projection in the hall. The projection showed the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet heading straight for the Divine Moon Dynasty. Seeing this, the Divine Martial Emperor couldn't help but sneer. He was very curious as to what gave that rebellious son the courage to dare to oppose him at this time. Originally, he didn't want to pay attention to Lu Chen anymore. The Great Xia Dynasty had been expanding in recent years, but he had never sent a celestial demon army to attack the Great Xia Dynasty, because in his opinion, the greatest threat in this universe was still Zantian. Although he didn't know where Zantian had gone, he had been guarding against Zantian. He didn't believe that Zantian had disappeared just like that. Zantian must be plotting something. At this moment, the Divine Martial Emperor stood up from the dragon throne and said coldly, "Since you insist on seeking death, then this emperor will grant your wish." The Divine Martial Emperor wanted to avenge the foreign realm. In the foreign realm, he was severely injured by Lu Chen, and all the emperors that the Divine Moon Dynasty brought to the foreign realm were also dealt with by Lu Chen. This was a great humiliation for the Divine Martial Emperor, who had never been defeated before. Now that Lu Chen had come to his door, it was a good opportunity for him to wash away his humiliation. He didn't believe that Lu Chen was still his opponent now that he had become a celestial emperor. Although Lu Chen could also possess strength close to that of a celestial emperor after using the spirit gathering formation, a counterfeit was, after all, a counterfeit. The Divine Martial Emperor then recalled the celestial demon armies that were fighting outside. Although he didn't think that Lu Chen could pose too great of a threat to him, he still concentrated all his forces together just in case. Lu Chen's personal experience was a bit strange in itself. He didn't know if Lu Chen would use any strange methods again in the future. It wouldn't hurt to be extra careful. With the Divine Martial Emperor's order, the celestial demon armies in the Central Star region immediately retreated to the Divine Moon Dynasty, giving the Immortal Alliance remnants who were being chased a chance to breathe. Seeing that the celestial demon armies had retreated, the emperors of the Immortal Alliance army were very confused. Why did the celestial demon armies suddenly retreat? What happened? Half a year passed in the blink of an eye, and the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet finally arrived in the void outside the Divine Moon Dynasty. At this time, the Divine Moon Dynasty was also ready. In front of the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet, there was a black mist, and it was difficult to estimate how many celestial demons were inside. The entire Divine Moon Dynasty was shrouded in black mist, completely resembling a demon's lair. At this moment, a sudden wave of pressure descended, and all the emperors present were suffocated by this wave of pressure. Even Emperor Yun Wei and the others hiding in the rear were affected by this wave of pressure. An emperor of the Immortal Alliance army regretted and said, We are being targeted by this wave of pressure even when hiding so far behind. The Celestial Emperor's strength is too terrifying. We shouldn't have come. We are all going to perish here. Emperor Yun Whale gritted his teeth and didn't speak. He also felt a hint of regret in his heart, but his eyes were still fixed on Lu Chen's flying rainbow immortal boat. He didn't believe that Lu Chen would take the initiative to come and seek death. Even if the Great Xia Dynasty really couldn't resist the Celestial Demon Army, there would always be some ways to deal with the Celestial Demons. Otherwise, how could they dare to attack the Divine Moon Dynasty with an army when they saw that the Immortal Alliance army had been defeated so miserably? Judging from the Great Xia Dynasty's step-by-step growth into the #1 power in the universe, Lu Chen still had some tricks up his sleeve. He shouldn't be stupid enough to seek his own death. Just as Emperor Yun Whale was comforting himself in his heart, Lu Chen suddenly transmitted his voice to the Great Xia Dynasty's fleet. Attack! Lu Chen's voice resounded throughout the void. The next moment, 2,000 death rays shot into the black mist of the Divine Moon Dynasty. For a time, there were constant screams in the black mist. Hearing the screams of the celestial demons, Emperor Yun Whale and the others were stunned. Since they formed the Immortal Alliance army, it was the first time they had heard such a miserable scream from the celestial demons. If you only have this little trick, then you can go die. As soon as he finished speaking, an even more majestic pressure was released from the Divine Martial Emperor's body. The next moment, the space of the entire universe was sealed off, and Lu Chen's position was also locked by the Divine Martial Emperor. Lu Chen didn't panic at all. He came out of the flying rainbow immortal boat and flew into the void, once again transmitting his voice to the emperors. Form the formation. The 400 emperors brought by the Great Xia Dynasty immediately formed the formation, and Lu Chen instantly possessed the strength of an emperor, even surpassing that of an emperor. Lu Chen didn't let all the emperors participate in the spirit-gathering formation. The remaining 100+ emperors would be responsible for cleaning up the Great Xia Dynasty's emperor realm celestial demons. The power of 400 emperors was enough for him to deal with the Divine Martial Emperor. After feeling the pressure emanating from Lu Chen, the emperors of the Immortal Alliance army were stunned. Another celestial emperor. Isn't it said that a universe cannot give birth to 2 celestial emperors? The Divine Martial Emperor is already a celestial emperor. Although he has been transformed into a celestial demon, he is also considered a celestial emperor. How can there be another celestial emperor now? Seeing the 400 emperors, Emperor Yun Whale quickly understood what was going on. End of chapter. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories. And never miss out on a great listen.